Good evening. On behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome everybody to this ACWD regular board meeting. And again, my name is Robert Shaver. I serve as ACWD's General Manager. Members of the public may participate in this public meeting either by using the Zoom app or by telephone. If you're participating by Zoom, generally we ask that all participants mute their microphones unless you're speaking. You may also be placed on mute by the district secretary. The district secretary will unmute participants at the appropriate times when the board is receiving public comments. In Zoom, you'll be able to view and follow along with the presentation materials as they are presented to the board. And at any time, you may submit a question or raise your hand if you're muted and you would like to do so. And you do that at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you're participating by telephone, we ask again that you put your phone on mute to assure the best sound quality for everyone. And you may use *6 to mute or unmute on your phone or *9 to raise your hand. You may download presentation slides from the district's website at www.acwd.org and follow along that way. Again, this Zoom webinar will be recorded and will be made accessible to the public for future viewing. The board has 4 closed session items this evening that will be covered near the end of the meeting. While the board convenes privately in closed session, members of the public may remain logged into Zoom or stay on the phone to be informed of any board reports once the closed sessions are concluded. Again, welcome and thank you for attending.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. With that, Mr. Warren, roll call, please.
Sure. Directors Akbari.
Present.
Gunther.
Here.
Sethy.
Here, and I would ask all public speakers to speak up, please, so we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Weed.
Here.
And Huang.
Here. Director Weed, would you lead us in a salute to the flag, please?
Again, all right. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Weed. Did I volunteer you 2 months in a row? My apologies.
No, two times in one night. Oftentimes
Did I?
No, I went the
Director
first.
Sethy.
I went the first time, John.
No. I'm just surprised. We've done this. It's fine. I say it more than as many times as you wish. It's wonderful. It's just oftentimes we'll do it once at the beginning of a general meeting, and
And
we're in a different world.
And I really appreciate your indulgence. And next is public comment. And I know this, we have a lot of members of public here wish to address the board. I believe you're all here for item 5.9 related to Delta conveyance. So the appropriate time to make a comment to ensure that it's appropriately reflected in the record is when the board is discussing item 5.9, not during the public comment period. But let me know, send me a text if you have time constraint. We'll see what we could work out. But if you are here to address the board on item 5.9, wait until we discuss item 5.9. So for now, I'll open the public comment. Members of the public may address the board on any issue not listed on the agenda, which are within the purview of the Alameda County Water District. A 5-minute limit is customary. However, the board president may adjust the actual time allotted. Members of the public who wish to address the board on a scheduled agenda item will be given the opportunity to do so. So with that, do I have any members of the public who wish to address the board on items that's not on tonight's agenda? If you wish to do so, please raise your hand in Zoom app or speak up if you are joining us through the phone. I am not seeing any hand, nor am I hearing anything. So with that, let's move on to item 4, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to add items to the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion, Paul Sethy, Director, add items 5.1 through 5.6 to the consent calendar, please.
I will second.
Thank you, Director Sethy. Thank you, Director Gunther. Mr. Warren?
Sure. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar as amended?
I'll move to adopt.
Yep, go ahead, Jim.
I got it, Paul. I move to adopt consent as amended.
Second,
Okay. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. With that, let's move on to item 5.7, financial audit, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 5.7 involves a presentation of ACWD's audited financial statements for fiscal year 2019 and 2020. And I know that our manager of finance, Jonathan Wunderlich, is especially pleased to kick off this item for us this evening.
Great, thank you, Mr. Shaver. You know, when I saw all the attendance tonight, I assumed it was for our audited financial statements, but district prepares a comprehensive annual financial report each year. And, you know, there are a number of sections in that. There's the cover letter, management discussion and analysis, which tries to put more in layman's terms our financial results, the statements and notes, as well as a statistical and historical section. The PUN group, the district's auditor, recently completed its audit of the district's financial statements and issued an unmodified or clean opinion. That is the best opinion that can be rendered. The auditor presented their results to the Finance Committee on October 20th, 2020, and Ms. Burke from our audit firm is here this evening as well and will provide a supplemental presentation. Acceptance of the comprehensive annual financial report will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 3.3, promote financial transparency. And so the action that's requested of the board tonight after receiving the presentation from the auditor is by motion, accept the audited financial statements and accompanying reports for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2020. And I should also add that with us this evening is Mariana Grajeda, our accounting and treasury manager, who will also participate in the presentation this evening. And I'd like to recognize her as well as the entire accounting division for the hard work that they do to create this report and to do a good enough job with our accounting all year that the auditor can give us a clean opinion. And so with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Burke.
Good evening, board members and staff. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present to you the results of the audit. And Mariana and I have talked about the presentation. And so we are going to let her kick off kind of the initial part of the presentation. We've got a short PowerPoint in your agenda items to really skinny down the 91-page CAFR that you have in front of you, as well as the other services that we render. So I was going to turn it over to Mariana, and then at the end, I'll talk about the results, which you've heard the good news already, but I'll give you more good news at the end. Go ahead, Mariana.
Okay. Andy, will you share the presentation or you want to share the screen?
You can go ahead. If you can, Mariana, go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Okay. You guys able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, good. So good evening, members of the board and members of the public. Thank you for having me. As Mrs. Burke mentioned, I will be presenting the district's audited financial statements. And at the end, towards the end of my presentation, I will turn it over for Mrs. Burke to present the audit results for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020. The agenda for this evening, I will go over the scope of work performed by our auditors. Then I will provide an overview of the financial statements. We also have included some information regarding the pension and OPEB plans. And then I will turn it over again to our auditor to report on the results of the audit. Oops. So first of all, with the scope of work, the plan group has been the district's auditors for the past 2 years, so they're very familiar with our processes and procedures. For the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020, they audited the district's comprehensive annual financial report, or CAFR, as we more commonly know it. This CAFR includes the statement of net position, or the balance sheet statement, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, or also commonly known as the income statement, the statement of cash flows, the notes to the financial statements, and required supplementary information as like the management discussion and analysis. They provide an opinion on this report. Again, this will be discussed later on. They also issued the Government Auditing Standards Report, which is our report on the internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. They issue a debt compliance letter, which basically reports the compliance on various covenants on the district's outstanding bonds. They also prepare requires communication reports to the board of directors, which outlines the management's and auditors' responsibilities as it relates to the audit. And lastly, they prepared appropriations limit report, and this is for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. And this report is just the calculation of the district on the limit on the annual appropriations from proceeds of taxes. So with that, we're going to move to the overview of the financial statements. So I will be going over, the 3 different statements that are included in the basic financial statements, and also highlighting some of the more significant impacts that happened during the fiscal year. First of all, I want to start with the statement that you have on your screen, which is the statement of net position. This statement shows the district's assets, the liabilities, and the deferred inflows and outflows at a point in time. In this case, these are the balances at June 30 to 2020. For the, in the essence of time, I'm not going to go over all of the line items. I'm just going to highlight some of the ones that had the biggest change during the fiscal year. But if you're interested on looking at more detailed view, this can be found on pages 11 and 12 of the CAFR. The first change that I'm going to highlight is, and I'm going to put it here, is this one right here. Oops, sorry. Which is the total change in total assets, which increased by $50.8 million compared to last year. This increase is comprised of the change in current assets of $31 million, and is due to our increase in balance in cash and investments due to operations, and also an increase of $19.7 million in non-current assets, which was driven by the various capital projects that the district currently has ongoing, like the fish ladder projects or the Alvarado and Isles main improvements. The next line I want to highlight is the total change on liabilities, which was a decrease of $6.8 million compared to last year. The biggest driver for this decrease is the payments that the district has made towards the net pension liability, the net OPEB liability, and also the scheduled debt service payments on the outstanding bonds. So this decrease in liabilities, combined with the increase in total assets and also the change in the current year net position, is the the reason why the total net position for the district increased by $57.6 million, which you can see at the bottom of the spreadsheet here. I will be discussing on the next slide the reason for the change in the current net pension liability, current net pension, net position. Next statement that I'm presenting is the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in that position. This statement provides information of the district activities for the current fiscal year. It basically shows the district's operations over the last fiscal year as far as revenues and expenses and any capital contributions received. What I want to highlight on this one is the increase in operating revenues of $10.3 million. This increase is driven mainly by the water sales, increase in water sales over the year, and is a result of the two rate increases that were effective March 1st, 2019 and March 1st, 2020. Similarly, we see an increase in operating expenses of $8.5 million. This increase was driven by increase in cost of water, mainly for the state due to a true-up that was implemented in the current fiscal year, along with increases in our administration and general expenses as a result of additional payments made towards the pension and OPEB liabilities. These two changes then brings us to our increase in net income before capital contributions of $5.7 million. And again, this one is the result of the increases in revenue netted with the increases in expenses. We do also see that there was a slight increase on non-operating revenues of $3.9 million. This one is the result of increases in our property tax, as well as in our investment income for the fiscal year. Lastly, on this page, the capital contributions, we see that it increased by $5.2 million. This is due to the various grants received for the fish ladder projects that are currently ongoing, and the district has various agencies providing grants to pay for this project. The last statement that I'm going to cover is the statement of cash flows. And this statement provides information on the district's cash receipts and cash payments and changes in cash for the current year. As you can see, just, we saw a slight decrease on the cash balance at the end of the year by $2.2 million. And this is just related to the various cash used by operations and our financing activities, like payment of the debt, as well as the various construction projects going on around by the district. Now I'm going to go over some pension and OPEB information. This information was included as there has been some interest in the past from the board just on this topic. So we decided to include this information so you can see how our liability has been changing over the past 5 years and how that has impacted our net position. So we've included the net pension and OPEB liability over the last 5 years. As you can see, in years 2016 to 2018, we saw an increase in this liability. But after that year, we're starting to see a decrease on the balance, and this is mainly due to the approval of additional payments the board had made over the years. The first payment actually happened in fiscal year 2018, which impacted the balances in 2019, and that's why you see the decrease. As the liability is decreasing, this has resulted in an increase in the balance in the unrestricted net position. And you can see that with the decreasing ratio of the liability to the net position. So we're very happy that this is something that the district is committed to doing. And we have seen the impact of those additional payments that are making over time. This couple of slides, this one and the next one, the reason why we included, we just wanted to present to the board the impact of a change of 1% will have on the total pension liability and the total OPEB liability. We currently have our assets, or the district's assets are for the pension are in the CalPERS plan. They are using a 7.15% discount rate. If that were to be changed by CalPERS and increased by 1%, we will see a decrease in the liability of about $30 million, as you can see in this slide. If in the contrary, they were to reduce the discount rate to 6.15%, we will see that same increase in the liability to $107 million. For the OPEB, we have our assets in the SERB plan, which is the California Employee Retiree Benefit Trust Plan, which is administered by CalPERS as well. And for that plan, they use a discount rate of 6.75%. And here is the same concept of what would happen if the discount rate was increased or decreased by 1% and how it will impact the total liability for the district. And with that, I'm going to turn it over now to Mrs. Burke, who will present the results of the audit for the fiscal year.
Thanks.
Good. Is it appropriate to make comments or ask related to the budget presentation before we go into the audit?
Yeah, I'm asking for questions before we go to the next part.
Okay. Sure. I was going to say, I was hoping we could actually finish staff presentation, then I'll go through director's questions and then go to public questions and comment and come back to director's comment, just because we have quite a few members of public that wish to speak to us on other items. But if you make it really short, sure. Director Weed, Director Sethy, which one want to start?
Go ahead, Director Weed.
I chair the Finance Committee, so let me take quick notes. We did quite well this year. We had a $57 million net increase in our position. And last year we had a $45 million net increase. In 2 years, over $100 million. But what's disconcerting is none of that was budgeted. We did not budget that $100 million over 2 years, even though we have a 2-year budget. And that's because we do not match our variable costs with variable income and our fixed costs.
Is there a question? I will definitely give you an opportunity to make comments, but is there a question?
Well, the next one relates to the question on the OPEB. What I would be helpful to note on these presentations is that we are currently underfunded in our legacy cost. And do we not still have the target of becoming fully funded by 2032, which is a long path to achieve the same level that we had prior to the 2008 financial debacle?
So that, yes, Director Weed, nothing has changed. We are on schedule to be fully funded by June 30, 2032. What's presented this evening is the current status of these trust funds, pension and OPEB, for purposes of financial reporting. So it does not include the projections of how we will get fully funded by 2032.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed. Director Sethy?
Yeah, a short comment and one question. So on the discount rate for OPEB and pension liabilities, I would encourage us again to plan for the lower discount rate because of lowering inflation. If we look at the 30-year bonds right now, 30-year treasuries, everything's shifting down below 2%. And so are expectations for market returns. So as far as our own in-house planning for how we pay down pension costs and OPEB, I would encourage us just use the more conservative numbers here, which
And the
means
question?
we have more to pay off. Okay, here's my question for our finance manager, Mr. Wunderlich. Could you explain, not only to me, but to our public, what the GAN limit is? It was in one of the earlier slides. And what this means for the district as far as our budget operations. I don't think it's very clearly understood by anyone what that appropriation limit is and what is it for our district?
Yeah, so great question. There are probably like 12 people in the entire state of California that really understand what it is. And it was a part, my understanding was part of Prop 13 from 1978, which restricted property tax collections. And it sets a limit on the growth and how much government agencies can spend from the proceeds of taxes. And so it was set at an original amount way back when, 40 plus years ago, and it can grow each year by a population factor and an income factor. And so as a district, we set it every year. In fact, the board adopted a resolution, I would guess, at the June board meeting of this year, setting our appropriations limit for the 2021 fiscal year. And really what it did is it started out with our limit 40 plus years ago, and it just gets adjusted every year. And so for us, our limit is actually about $80 million. And that's a round number. For us, we are never at risk of exceeding it. We only get, a little over 10 million from the proceeds of taxes because we are primarily funded by water rates. And that rate revenue is not considered a tax, and so it does not count against the GAN limit. Did I help at all?
So does that mean that we have a lot of excess
So
property
I would
tax revenue to utilize?
No, so really the best way I think I could describe it for Alameda County Water District is that when these limits were first put into play, the proceeds of taxes were much more relevant to how we financed our operations. And so as a result, that limit grows based on the fact that, we funded a bigger share of our operations than with property taxes. And so as that's grown, but we have shifted our primary funding mechanism to water bills, largely the CAN limit has become really irrelevant for the district.
I see. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Wunderlich.
Thank you, Director Sethy. Any other questions from the board? If not, I would ask Ms. Burke to proceed. Ms. Burke, please.
Barring no other questions. So thank you, everybody, for letting Mariana get through the presentation on the financial statement. It was a real pleasure to do your audit this year. As you heard earlier, John indicated that we have, and I think you could go to the next slide, Mariana. We've issued what we call an unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements for Alameda County Water District. What an unmodified opinion means is that we, as the auditors, have come in and take a look at the financial statements that you've prepared. We've looked at the underlying documentation, not on a 100% basis, but we sample our transactions and we evaluate whether or not those financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. For the district, you are a governmental agency, so those principles are our authoritative standard body is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. They issue the guidance for determining all disclosures and presentations in the financial statements. Secondly, we look at any accounting policies, and those are disclosed in the financial statements in your footnotes. We look at those accounting policies and evaluate if they remain the same between years or if they've changed for any reason. And in this year, we did not have any significant changes in accounting policies between the 2 years. And in addition, with COVID-19, the GASB has actually come back and given us some reprieve, very similar to FASB for any of you that are in private businesses. They've given us some reprieve because of COVID to delay implementation on any new accounting policies for about another year. So we've looked at those accounting policies and determined our opinion as rendered is that those accounting policies have been consistently applied between years. The other aspect we look at is whether or not the estimates are reasonable. We just had the discussion on discount rates as they were given for financial reporting purposes. We take a look at those estimates and we look at the assumptions that underlie those as it goes, as the financial information is reported in the financial and as determined by your valuation experts, which would be the CalPERS actuary. And we determine that those are reasonable in all material respects. And then last, we look at the disclosures in the financial statement. Disclosures are what we would call your footnotes to the numbers. They kind of walk you through each of the set of numbers and the district's policies and how those are applied and reported out for you as the board and your stakeholders. And so we look at those disclosures, go through the standards and determine that you've not missed any disclosures or that you've not materially misstated any disclosures, and ensure that those disclosures are consistent with the financial statements above. So going through that process in the audit sounds really simple here on one page. It takes a while to get through it. And we really appreciate all of Mariana and her staff's support of us, as well as John and many of you throughout the organization, if staff are in the audience, in helping respond to our inquiries. The other results that we want to report to you today is, and as Mariana described in the scope of work, we issue several other reports. One is we issued the SAS 115, which is a report on internal controls. We issue that report not for purposes of testing your internal controls for determining operating efficiency or effectiveness. We look at internal controls for purposes of determining our auditing procedures for the current year and evaluating if those can be relied upon. And what that does is it allows us, if we can rely on the internal controls for the district, it allows us to either reduce our sampling sizes or do other less significant procedures because we know that you have adopted sound policies and sound internal controls. Our results.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Director Sethy with a quick question.
Yes.
Who among the board did you interview as to weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we might have identified?
Yeah, we actually interviewed several members of the board this year, and we rotate those generally, but we did send audit confirmations to all members of the board. So I would say we've talked with everybody on the board, not necessarily individually about internal controls, but we did do inquiry on fraud in accordance with our auditing standards to determine if there was risk of fraud or weaknesses in internal control related to fraud in the organization, as well as those that we interviewed. There were several of you here on the board that we interviewed. And those 3 interviews, we did talk about internal controls and any concerns about internal controls.
Okay, I was not personally interviewed, but I did receive the paperwork interview. So I was just interested whether you surveyed enough board members on the subjects. Thank you.
Yeah, we did survey everybody. We did talk with John, I know was one that we interviewed. We talked to Akbari as well as one other, and then we did get all confirmations returned. So I really appreciate the board's diligence in taking a look at our inquiries and submitting those back. We don't interview everybody every year. We rotate it around, and we did interview management as well. I know John got the pleasure of talking with us as well. So,
Okay, thank you.
so the next two reports that are here is GAN. So you have a separate report on internal controls, and what I want to report out is that we did not identify any weaknesses in internal control or combination of weaknesses in internal control that we deem to be material weaknesses, and we did not identify any significant deficiencies in internal control. The other two reports, we talked about the GAN report, and that is an agreed upon procedures report that's established with the League of California Cities. We apply certain procedures to the GAN limit computations, and if we have any variance from those standard procedures, we would report to any variances from those, and we did not have any findings. So that was a clean report. In addition, we do issue a debt compliance report related to certain covenants in your 2009, 2012, and 2015 bonds. We look at certain debt compliance to ensure that it was in place and that the district was in compliance with those terms and conditions related to the debt as defined in our engagement letter and with management, and issued an in relation opinion on that, and we did not have any findings related to the debt compliance. The last report that you have in your packet is the SAS 114 letter. That is our annual required communications to the board related to any significant audit findings, any qualitative aspects of our accounting practices, significant footnotes, disagreements with management. All of those are reported as none that are significant. We did also disclose in that letter any significant assumptions or estimates that you might consider, as well as any stakeholders and us as the auditor that are significant to the financial statements, and we've described those and the process that we took on those within that letter. Last, I think I would like to conclude in there, you can see any corrected or uncorrected misstatements as a requirement. We are required to disclose to those charged with governance any uncorrected misstatements at the end of the audit, and our conclusion as to why those were not posted. We did not have any uncorrected misstatements, and any audit adjustments that we identified during the audit were posted by Mariana.
Director Sethy, I have another question here directed to Mr. Wunderlich again. I'm really trying to understand the GAN limit here. If we're only at 10% of our GAN limit, does that mean the district has a lot more taxing authority? What's the meaning of this?
No, so the GAN limit does not relate to your taxing authority. It relates to the proceeds of taxes that you can spend. So it doesn't mean that it means that the amount of revenue we have available to us from taxes is significantly less than the amount we could spend from the proceeds of taxes.
Does that mean we have extra taxing authority?
No, we do not have any additional taxing authority.
So the GAN limit, and maybe I can interject here, the GAN limit was established as a result of Prop 13 and ensuring that Mr. Gann, Paul Gann, decided that spending of general fund money exceeded the limit, and it was exceeding it without any checks and balances at a point in time after they had put Prop 13 in place and put a limit on how much property tax could be assessed on residential, commercial, industrial. We just went through an election on this. And so the GAN report was basically the checks and balances to determine whether or not spending was within the property tax limit that is adjusted by inflation. So you look at that initial year, the base year, and it's adjusted by population inflation factors that are elected by the district's board. The only agency right now that I understand is getting close to exceeding their limit is City of Oakland. But beyond that, there isn't anybody currently that is really at that clip of exceeding the amount of taxes by
So
appropriating.
we had somewhere around 10 to $12 million of property tax receipts last year. And we're saying our limit is 80 million. Is there any opportunity between the 10 to 12 million and the 80 million? I'm really trying to understand what that gap means for the district.
Really, what that gap means is that since the limit was first put into place, we have very much transitioned away from property taxes and toward water billing revenue to fund our operations. And so, you know, it doesn't mean we have taxing authority. We do not, and let me say it really clear, we do not have the authority to go and assess $80 million of property taxes. Right.
John Weed, if I might. This was as I recall, was a separate initiative on following Proposition 13. Paul Gann put another item on the ballot, which was approved by the voters, but they really did not think through the wording that they put in because, as it was noted, it applies to school districts. I was on the community college board at the time, and everyone was amazed when they looked at it and said, this is not a real problem. Although there was a lot of wringing of hands when it was initially put on the ballot. When they sat down and looked at it, it didn't impact anybody. It's a purely arbitrary number that they came up with, that the voters put this criteria that you have to meet. It has no taxing import at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wee.
Mr. Wunderlich, do we as an agency, county water district, have the authority to charge an additional property tax in some way that stays within the GAN limit? I think that's where my question is directed.
Well, the GAN limit does not give us any authority to assess a property tax. Does that answer your question?
I think maybe I can help. If we did get authority to assess more property taxes, which we do not have now, then that shows the possibility based on the GAN limit. But as Mr. Wunderlich indicated, at this time, we don't have the authority to assess more property taxes simply based on the GAN limit.
Well, I'm reflecting back decades now with our water district where, as Mr. Wunderlich was pointing out, we had voter-approved tax initiatives to finance our infrastructure build-out in the community in the 30s through the 70s, and that dwindled away. So I'm wondering if we had a big project, do we have an opportunity to go to the public for taxing authority to finance something? And maybe I should bring this up at a future finance committee meeting instead of here.
Yeah. So if we were given the authority for a tax, then yes, you know, we have a lot of room within the GAN limit.
And I think this is Director Sethy. Thank you for the suggestion. I think if you wish to pursue this topic, let's move it to the finance committee, please. I think you're one.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry to take up so much time on the question, but
Yeah, and I just wanted,
bothering me for a while.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that water districts can issue a parcel tax, but a parcel tax does not come into play in the GAN limit because it's not property tax based on AV. Does that make sense? You can have your voters approve a parcel tax to fund capital projects, but that is not property taxes, is not subject to GAN.
Well, that's how the district was largely financed. The 30s through the 70s was on a parcel tax.
All right, and let's focus back onto the report, please, Ms. Burke.
Thank you. So that completes my prepared remarks on the audit and the audit report. So we can either open it up for questions or.
So thank you, Ms. Burke and Ms. Krajeda. And any questions from the board? Additional questions?
No, Mariana and Vanessa, thank you for such really good presentations tonight.
All right, and I am going to open the floor up to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address the board on this issue? I see we have a chat from Mr. Anand Karipineni. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name too badly. If you still wish to address the board, please either raise your hand or speak up through Zoom. If not, I will ask District Secretary to record your chat as part of your comments for this item. Right. I am not hearing or seeing any hand. Do I have any other? Oh, Fred, and I see a hand from Fred. Please address the board.
So you went through a financial presentation that goes beyond what you have on your website. Is this information available on the website?
Yeah, I can answer that. So if you go to acwd.org/finance, the complete comprehensive annual financial report is there.
Yeah, it seems to be not, I think what you presented is beyond what's there in terms of dates. I mean, the latest financial report goes to 2020.
Yeah, that's what was presented.
Oh, I thought I saw some 2021 dates here.
That was in reference to the GAN limit discussion. Yeah. So that's a shorter report from the auditor that we can make available.
It's actually, yeah, the GAN limit is actually approved when you adopt your budget at the beginning of the fiscal year. So the 2021 is available when we come in to do the audit. So we're always a year ahead on that one.
All right, so it's a public document, correct, Mr. Wonderlich?
Yes.
That's posted.
So there are a number of shorter reports from the auditor that, quite frankly, are mostly boilerplate language. And as a result, we have not proactively posted those on the website, but we can certainly make them available to anybody who wants them.
I'd certainly be interested. So this report also showed an increase in revenue and matched by an increase in expenses. So whatever windfall might have happened due to additional water consumption seems to have been absorbed by some kind of expenses. Could you illustrate where what I've just described? I mean, I don't have your presentation, so I can't tell you the slide number. And your image obscures the slide number, so I don't really know what the slide numbers would be.
It's probably this slide.
Yeah, I think this is the slide that he's talking about. So this information is as I mentioned, it's a condensed information that only reports the total revenues and total expenses. The more detailed information is in the CAFR, which is what Mr. Wunderlich mentioned, is posted to the website, the ACWD website.
So I think what John Weed was referring to was that going from 2019 to 2020, there was an increase in revenues.
Actually, it's John Weed. I noted that there was a $57 million increase in our net position. That was a net change. Of that, the bulk of it was in current assets. So that's money available at and about 31 million. The remainder was in fixed assets and valuation. So we did very well. We received far more revenue than we had budgeted, and our expenses were well below what we had budgeted.
So I would caution a little bit here against drawing too much of a comparison between this report and our budget report. This report is on an accrual basis, whereas we budget and do our financial planning on a cash basis. And, as a result, for example, our operating expenses here include depreciation, but depreciation is not a cash transaction, as an example of one of the biggest differences. And so, I don't know that our revenues were actually more than we were planning on or budgeting on during the year. What did happen is we had perhaps some expenses, maybe the construction timing on certain capital projects, which are now ongoing, like Alvarado Niles, perhaps we're a few months behind. And as a result, the assets that were current assets or cash as direct references was maybe a little higher than anticipated, while a little less was invested into infrastructure. But with the capital activity we see right now, we see that beginning to reverse itself a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Wunderlich. Any other questions for the board, Fred?
Well, it's just this very slide. It shows a revenue increase of 8.6%, but somehow the operating expenses went up by that amount to absorb whatever revenues were generated. It seems kind of remarkable that the expenses seem to track the revenues pretty closely. Like there's extra money and let's spend it.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. I see Mr. Ken N has a comment, wish to address the board. Please speak up, sir.
Yeah, first of all, the GAN limit was Proposition 4, not Proposition 13. And it was significant. I may be one of the 12 people on the planet that remember getting a rebate check in 1987 due to the state actually hitting the GAN limit and having to rebate taxes collected in excess of the GAN limit. Much of that was undone with Proposition 98. I'm making a comment. Basically, I'm disturbed by the line of questioning from Director Sethy. It sounds like the district is exploring just ways of taxing more and more and more, just because there's a glimmer of hope that you won't run into the GAN limit. I think that is really poor thinking. As the previous speaker noted, the district is doing well. The auditor says that, even Director Weed says we are doing quite well. By the way, the 8.8% increase in revenues, if you read through the board packet, is due to better than expected water sales coupled with the 4% rate increases that happened in the 2 prior years. So I am dismayed or appalled at the fact that the director and the board is seeking to raise raise taxes just because the district is underneath the GAN limit. Thank you.
Mr. Ken, and let me offer a very short rebuttal. You are clearly misunderstanding my line of questioning. I'm trying to push the envelope to better understand what our financial flexibility is. And I am understanding of our previous history over decades where we did have multiple parcel taxes that chiefly finance the infrastructure of the water district. So I'm just trying to better understand where we can draw money from down the road based on some vital project that comes to the district. I'm not trying to push an idea here or even make a business case for doing anything in that direction. I am just trying to understand better our financial flexibility in different areas. That's it. Not
Thank-
making any pitch for anything.
Thank you, Director Sethy. Thank you, Ken N. Do I have any other members of the public that wish to address the board on this item? If you wish to do so, please raise your hand in the Zoom app, or if you are joining us by phone, please just speak up. I am not seeing any hands or hear anything, then I am going to move this back to the board. Any comments from the board? Director Weed, I believe you were going to make a comment earlier and I cut you off. My apologies.
If I were to make a note with the auditors, this is basically a question of our book, that their bookkeeping is excellent. And there's no evidence of fraud or misappropriation of funds. That this is a clear and accurate depiction of what did occur at the district. The other would be a process audit, which might look at our processes and whether or not this is not a process audit. This is a financial audit, a bookkeeping audit. Would that be a correct synopsis? Would be the question for the auditor?
That would be correct. This is not a process or internal control audit on the district. It's an audit of the financial statements in accordance with the standard setting bodies that govern your external financial reporting.
And finding no discrepancies is extraordinary, and that's a great testimony to the staff and their excellence of the work, of their performance of their positions and jobs.
Thank you, Director Lee. Mr. Wunderlich, do you have a comment?
No, I didn't.
Okay, all right. No, your little window just lit up. I was just wondering. All right, any other directors have comments?
I'll just make a quick comment. Like Director Weed was mentioning, this is a good news story for the district. It shows that our staff are doing a great job, particularly in the finance department. So I just wanted to express my thanks to all of our staff for the good work that they're doing and for the PUN group for putting together this audit.
Thank you, Director Akbari.
Very
Jack-
quickly, I'd just like to follow that and say I agree. Thank you to the staff.
Yep, same here. Thank you to staff, to the finance department. Thank you, Ms. Grajeda and Ms. Burke. With that, I think I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Mr. Warren,
Okay, Directors Akbari,
Aye.
oops, have we lost Mr. Warren?
can you hear me?
Yes. thanks.
Okay, I'm taking roll, so I wasn't sure if you can hear me. So Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Director Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. Moving on, item 5.8, and thank you again, Finance Department.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And since we are coming to the Thanksgiving holiday as general manager, I'm always very thankful for a clean audit. Thank you.
And before we move to the next item, since we had the question from Fred, by the end of the day tomorrow, I will make sure all of the other audit reports are on our website there at acwd.org/finance.
Thank you, Mr. Wunderlich.
Okay, President Huang, item 5.8 involves a resolution adopting findings as responsible agency for the final environmental impact report for the State Water Project Supply Contract amendments with the Department of Water Resources and approving the Water Supply Contract Water Management Amendment. And I should add that these are amendments for the existing state water project, and the board's consideration of Delta conveyance is the next item, 5.9, for any members of the public that are interested in that item. So I turn this over to our Manager of Water Resources, Laura Heides.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. The district has a long-term water supply contract, or SWP contract, with the State of California Department of Water Resources, DWR, for the delivery of state water project water. Under the existing state water project contract, water transfers are permitted in a limited and very specific manner, resulting in their infrequent use. Given changes in hydrology and further constraints placed on DWR's operation of the state water project, and to provide flexibility in the future, public water agencies, or PWAs, and DWR conducted a series of public negotiations with the goal of agreeing on concepts to supplement and clarify the existing water transfer and exchange provisions of the state water project contracts to provide improved water management. In a December 2017 notice to contractors, DWR indicated its desire to supplement and clarify the water management tools through this public process. In June 2018, the public water agencies and DWR agreed upon an agreement in principle, or AIP, which included specific principles to accomplish this goal. These principles included clarifying existing practices for exchanges, providing new flexibility for single and multi-year non-permanent water transfers, allowing public water agencies to set terms of compensation for transfers and exchanges, providing for the limited transfer of carryover and Article 21 water types, and adding provisions to ensure transparency, among some others. In October 2018, a draft environmental impact report, or DEIR, was circulated for the proposed project. In addition, the AIP at that time included certain cost allocation sections for the California Water Fix project. In early 2019, the governor decided not to move forward with the water fix, and DWR rescinded its approvals of the project. After this shift, the public water agencies and DWR held a public negotiation and agreed to remove the water fix cost allocation sections from the AIP, but to keep all of the water management provisions in the AIP. The AIP was finalized on May 20th, 2019. DWR decided to amend and recirculate the DEIR. In February 2020, DWR published the partially recirculated DEIR for the State Water Project Supply Contract Amendments for Water Management, which is how the project is defined in that document. And in August 2020, DWR certified the final environmental impact report for the project. The proposed water management amendment to the State Water Project contract for consideration is based upon the AIP, has been drafted by Public Water Agency and DWR attorneys, and is attached to the resolution that is before the board for consideration tonight. It is anticipated that this language will be final. If approved by the board, the proposed amendment would be effective when 24 of the State Water Project public water agencies execute the amendment. This item was reviewed with the Water Resources and Conservation Committee on September 23rd and was presented at the regular board meeting on October 8th. Board authorization of this amendment will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.2, protect existing imported water supplies. So tonight's staff recommendation is by motion, adopt a resolution. 1, considering the Department of Water Resources final environmental impact report for the State Water Project Supply Contract Amendments for Water Management, and in the district's limited role as responsible agency, adopting findings for the State Water Project Supply Contract Amendments for Water Management final environmental impact report. And 2, approving the amendment number 21, the water management amendment to the water supply contract between the State of California Department of Water Resources and Alameda County Water District, and authorizing the general manager to execute the water management amendment. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, so a little bit about process first. So now staff has finished her presentation. I am going to give the board an opportunity to ask questions, clarification questions. Then I will open it up for public comment. And due to the number of people that perhaps potentially want to comment on this item, I will limit everybody to 3 minutes. After that, I'll come back to the board for last minute question and comments. And before we go to the board, can I have a show of hands? This is going to be interesting as to how many members of the public that wish to address the board on item 5.8. I see one. Okay. All right. Doesn't look like that many. I think everybody's here is for item 5.9. But with that, let's move to the board first. Any clarification questions from the board to staff? I am not seeing or hearing any. All right, then I am going to open this up to members of our public. If any members of the public who wish to address the board on this specific issue, please raise your hand or speak up. And I do have a question. It says from Lane Fajol. Mr. Fajol asked to clarify, this is especially about agenda 5.8 and not 5.9, correct? Yes, Mr. Fajol, this is about 5.8. We will have a special separate presentation for item 5.9. I am not seeing any hands for item 5.8. With that, then let me wrap it back to the board. Actually, forget to ask do I have any members of the public that joined us on the phone wish to address the board on this item? If you wish to address the board on item 5.8 and you joined us on the phone, please speak up now. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody. So let's come back to the board. Directors, any comments, questions?
John Weed, a step in the right direction. And but it's taken us a few years a number of years just to get to this point. And we will continue to make water more of a commodity and a market-based substance statewide for everyone's benefit.
Thank you for your comment, Director Weed. Any other directors wish to make a comment on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation on item 5.8.
Thank you.
Reviewed by our committee with Jim and I.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you, Director Gunther.
Okay, Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. With that, let's move to item 5.9. Before we start the item, can I have a show of hand to see how many people that wish to address the board so I could kind of get the better sense of timing? 1, 2, 3. Oh, not bad. Okay. Thank you so very much. You may put your hand down. I will ask you to raise your hand again when it's appropriate. So with that, let's start with staff presentation. I know this is quite long, so I am going to ask for members of the public and our director's indulgence. Please just jot down your questions so we could have a better flow in the presentation. I know it's going to be quite lengthy. And also, if you think it's an appropriate place to break, Ms. Heides, I think you'll be making this presentation. Let me know. Perhaps we could take a break and do a round of questions. That would also work. All right. So Ms. Heides, I believe you have the item.
Yes, I do. And I guess I will just start sharing my screen here for this item. And this is item 5.9, resolution. Let's see, hang on. Maybe Andy will let me share my screen here in a minute. This is item 5.9, resolution authorizing a 1.15% participation level in the Delta Conveyance Project, authorizing funding for project environmental planning, authorizing the general manager to execute various financing and implementation agreements and related documents, and determining actions are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And before I launch into this, and Andy, I think you have to maybe stop sharing your screen and then I'll share mine here in a minute. Oh, wait, no, found the button. Sorry, my apologies.
That's okay. I was just going to say you can share anytime.
And as I'm attempting to share my screen here, I would just also note that we did receive 2 different pieces of correspondence related to item 5.9, which hopefully you're seeing on the screen right now, the presentation, some head nods maybe, or shout out if I'm not. Okay, great. So we received 1 letter from the Sierra Club and we received 1 email from Emily Harris, both of those correspondents were recommending against providing funding as tonight's item proposes. So with that, I'm happy to launch into this item. We have an acronym key here that I'm not going to go over, but it's here for your reference that goes over some of the acronyms we'll be using tonight. And I also do want to acknowledge and thank Mr. Thomas Neiser, who's on with us tonight, who will be covering part of this presentation as well. We'll be covering some background on Delta Conveyance. We'll also review previous board actions and recent developments. We'll talk about the Delta Conveyance Project or DCP preliminary benefits. We'll talk about costs and cost allocations. Then we'll review ACWD's business case and the cost impact that we've looked at in previous times. And we will also talk about DCA scope and governance changes and the various agreements for consideration tonight as we wrap up with the staff recommendation. So just a brief overview, what is Delta Conveyance? It is a proposed infrastructure upgrade to the State Water Project. It includes a single tunnel up to 6,000 CFS in capacity with 2 intakes, 2 potential corridors, and a variety of forebays, pumping plant, South Delta conveyance facilities, all that would be used to connect to existing State Water Project facilities. DWR is in the process of considering a number of alternatives for the project. So the overall objective of the Delta Conveyance Project is to restore and protect the ability to deliver State Water Project water supply. And I won't go over all of this in detail, but just the main areas of interest are climate resiliency, seismic resiliency, water supply reliability to restore and protect the ability to deliver State Water Project deliveries in compliance with regulatory and contractual constraints. And it also has an objective for operational resiliency as well. Previous board action and recent developments on the project, I did want to highlight in October 2017, the ACWD board authorized the California participation in the California Water Fix. At that time, we had a percent share of 0.55% of the total project. That included federal participation at that time. That was a 2-tunnel project with about a 9,000 CFS capacity. In May 2018, the ACWD board authorized an updated participation level in the project at a 0.694% participation while it was still California Water Fix 2-tunnel project. In February 2019, the Governor Newsom in his State of the State announced he did not support the Water Fix project as configured, but did support a single tunnel. In January 2020, DWR released the Delta Conveyance Notice of Preparation for revised Delta Conveyance project with a single tunnel of 6,000 CFS. In February 2020, ACWD received an update on Delta Conveyance where we reviewed the Notice of Preparation, the DCA activities at that time, and an update on the public negotiation process. In April 2020, Department of Water Resources completed the Delta Conveyance agreement in principle negotiations, except for the contractor participation table that is included. So there are a number of items for the board's consideration tonight related to this project. We will take a look at the agreement in principle for the State Water Project contract amendment, and the board will consider allocation of Delta Conveyance project benefits and costs. We'll also consider funding for environmental planning, including a reallocation of previous gap funding that the district has provided to DWR. And we will also look at revising the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority governance structure to reflect updated participation. So to launch in, we will talk about the Delta Conveyance project preliminary benefits. And to review the preliminary DCP benefits analysis, I just want to share that DWR is currently developing the Delta Conveyance proposed project. At this time, DWR has not defined the project operations and has not completed regulatory processes that may impact project operations. So these are just, at this time, a coarse estimate of water supply changes using the CalSim 2 model. And I want to emphasize that estimates may change as Delta Conveyance project is further defined, as permitting is completed, and as modeling is refined. So overall, water resiliency, water reliability and resiliency benefits of the project include climate change adaptation and stormwater capture, sea level rise adaptation, seismic resilience, South Delta flow pattern improvements for fisheries are another benefit, water transfer capacity and carriage water savings, and water quality improvements for state water project deliveries. And to frame what we're going to look at in terms of potential benefits and the range of potential benefits, I'd want to talk a moment about what this all means in terms of estimating state water project exports under future conditions and risks. So this graphic that's sort of a cone shaped shows we're here today at a point in time. And if you move forward in time, given all these different risks, changing regulations, climate, sea level, seismic and levee conditions may change. Other things may change that we don't know yet. There's a number of different scenarios that may exist in the future. And can you see my cursor moving here? Maybe, okay, good. So there's a number of different wide range of scenarios that may be possible under the future. And so at this point, we're still a ways away from that, and the exact future conditions are unknown, but are likely some combination of the different possibilities that we're thinking about today in terms of climate, hydrology, sea level, regulatory, seismic, and other risk drivers. So the scenarios that we're going to look at are really just help us think about the range of possibilities that might occur and assess the state project reliability and resilience in the face of those possibilities. So the preliminary water supply assessment scenarios that have been provided by the state water contractors include 5 plausible combinations of regulatory, climate, and sea level and seismic levee risk future scenarios. Each scenario was simulated with and without the Delta Conveyance project, and the Delta Conveyance project operations are based on the California water fix, as that's the best available information at this time. And what you can see in this graph, and I'm not going to go over all of this in detail, but I'm happy to answer questions if there's anything additional. But the Delta Conveyance project improves state water project resilience under the future conditions. That's what this is attempting to show. And if you look on the left here is average annual state water project delta exports. The pink shows the existing, and the 2 next sort of bars of groups of symbols here show in the middle future without the Delta Conveyance project, the range of different possibilities that exist. And then on the right hand side, the future with the Delta Conveyance project, and you can see that the range of possibilities look better with that, with the project in place. Oops, and my mouse is going a little crazy, sorry. Okay. Uh-oh, sorry, I'm having some mouse difficulties. Okay, I'm gonna hang on to it here. Okay, so overall, this demonstrates improved resilience. Okay, so to take a closer look at reliability compared to future conditions without the Delta Conveyance project, this graph here shows a variety of the range of different scenarios provided. On the left axis, you see the average annual state water project exports, and along the bottom axis, you see the different scenarios that have been considered. You have 2 existing scenarios on the left and 5 future scenarios that represent a range of different situations on the right. The blue bar shows without the Delta Conveyance project, and the gold or orange bars that you see demonstrate the increment that would be available with the Delta Conveyance project. So to zoom in a bit, this provides a preliminary estimate of potential state water project water supply change with Delta Conveyance project under what is called the current trend scenario. So this is just zooming in on one of the bars called current trends that you saw on the previous slide. And this shows along the bottom just a range of different water year types, from average all the way, to wet, above normal, below normal, dry, and critical. And so here you can see the estimate of without the Delta Commands project in blue, and the increment of possible additional water available with the Delta Commands project. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to turn it over to, so that is just a super high flyover of the possible range of benefits that you may find in a project like this, or with this project. And so what I'm going to do now is turn it over to, oh wait, I'm not turning it over yet. My apologies, sorry. We're going to talk now about preliminary costs. And again, we've got the preliminary benefits, and then these are the preliminary costs and cost allocation. And so the DCA cost assessment that I want to share some information about, the program scope overall is the cost assessment based on DWR's proposed project in the notice of preparation, and it's based on a conceptual engineering report. It has not been completed at this time. So the cost assessment, I want to stress here, and that's why it's underlined, this is the early cost assessment to inform the Public Water Agency's investment in project planning. And the cost estimate that has been made at this time is $15.9 billion in non-discounted dollars. And just so you're aware what's included, it's based on preliminary engineering, but includes project costs for construction, management, oversight, mitigation, planning, soft costs, and contingencies. And I do want to emphasize that there are a number of contingencies included in the cost estimate. And so that 15 billion cost estimate is for the overall project. Obviously, ACWD is not taking on a project of this magnitude on our own. So to explain briefly how the costs and benefits would be allocated for the project, I have this graphic here showing at the top. The blue box is the overall costs, of course, have to add up to 100%. And then the next blue box, the State Water Project contractors, there are 29 of us that would have to, that would be involved. So 100, that would be 100% of the total, but there are 5 north of Delta State Water Project contractors that would not receive benefit from the project because of their location. And so you see on the left, those 5 would not participate in the project. So the remaining 24 would take on the planning costs. Next, down in the green, there may be some south of Delta contractors that do not participate in the project. So you see those on the left in the green. And then the estimate right now is that that would leave a remaining 18 south of Delta participating state water contractors to cover 100% of the total cost. And so when you do that math and run it through, what we're recommending for ACWD's participation is a participation level of 1.15% that you see in the rightmost green box. Okay, and now, so that is a very brief flyover of the total cost and what we're looking at for our participation in planning only at this time. I want to turn it over to Mr. Thomas Neiser, who's going to cover ACWD's review of business case for participation in the project. And so Thomas, are you there?
All right, there we go.
Okay. And if you go ahead and just say next slide, I will flip.
Righto. Okay, thank you. So as the board's very well aware, we spent a tremendous amount of time a couple of years ago bringing repeated business case presentations on the predecessor WaterFix. And as Laura mentioned, this is basically just the same project, but a little bit smaller. Likewise, we, similar to before, have a wide range of water supply assumptions and benefits to work with. However, we don't have the detailed data yet to do a full cost analysis and do that sort of comparative metrics like we did with IPR alternatives, LVE, what have you. So working with what we have at this time, we just sort of did a reductive approach and just said, well, let's look at what we used to have and what do we have now in terms of a project proposal and information. So next slide, please. Great. So to start with, I'd like to remind the board of where we were with the WaterFix business case in 2018. We found that conveyance would potentially increase water supply, but we said it was mostly a value to the district as a protection against further reductions. Meaning if we don't build the project with additional regulations, salt management due to sea level rise, having to let more fresh water go out just to keep the salt at bay, we were going to be losing a lot of supply. So at the very least, we expected WaterFix to just sort of keep us whole as sort of our present level of supply. We also found that it was quite affordable when we got the final business case with the financing options. Our finance team did a great job of figuring out what the bill impact would be. And we found $2.40 to $3.20, depending on a few assumptions, per month per household. And what we got with that was the resiliency. We were going to get a system that would protect us from sea level rise, from delta levee failures that are only going to go up in probability with climate change, or any one of several earthquake faults that could devastate the delta. So the conclusion back in 2018 was, even if we don't get new water supply, on the order of $3 a month per household, with some pretty cost-effective insurance about the resiliency benefits. Next slide, please. So with that as the basis for this analysis, so what's different about the current proposal from the old one? As you heard, this is a smaller project than WaterFix. So the cost's a bit lower, but we've also had escalation. It's a larger cost for ACWD due to lower participation, most notably the Central Valley Project or the federal, the Bureau of Reclamation not participating in the project, as well as some people opting out. So we have we got a bigger share of a slightly cheaper project, less expensive. So when we looked at the data that's available to us, we see, compared to WaterFix, we see basically the uncertainty around water supply in the future is the same. As Laura showed, 6 out of 7 scenarios indicate there could be more water, but we don't know what the future regulations are going to be. We don't really know how climate change is going to play out. So maybe there's some additional water supply, but we do see the same seismic and climate change protections that we identified in 2018 as really being enough of a reason for ACWD to invest in this project. And we did, with that costing information, we find that the affordability, while it's gone up a bit, it'll be an extra sort of $1 to 50 cents per month per household. It's still a very affordable insurance policy against delta collapse from seismic events or from climate change. And in the basis, in continuity of the decision that was made in 2018, we believe it still remains a worthwhile investment simply for that resiliency. And note that if we do get some additional water supply from it, even if it keeps us where we are today, that will have a direct offsetting cost savings from increased San Francisco purchases, which is going to be our future with further loss of state water supply. So next slide, please. Yeah, and this is much of the same information that was presented earlier in the statements I just made, but we spent a lot of time with uneasiness about this. It's a big, expensive project. There's a lot of uncertainty, so many unknowns, but the point of this chart is just to sort of go back and hit the top benefits that were identified for the conveyance project, WaterFix first, and now the DCP. We had that operational flexibility, arguably some environmental benefits that's debated by some folks, but seismic resilience, climate readiness, and water supply. And we starred the 2 items that we previously said this is enough reason to do this project, is to protect the water supply. Recall our delta outage scenarios, we could be without state water supplies from between 1 and 5 years, depending on the hydrology. So this is high stakes if we lose the delta. And the nice thing that I just want to emphasize is those are the highly confident variables. We don't know about water supply. We're not certain it's going to be an improvement for the environment, although there's plenty of reason to believe it will be better. And the operational flexibility should be better. But the ones that we have no doubt about are the resiliency enhancements. And that's a really comforting thing, given that that's enough justification for the project. Next slide, please. Oh, and this was really just some additional information to how we got to the assumptions of the cost per month per household, just the basic financing assumptions, sort of standard amortization calculation here. We'll note that when we said $3.50 a month, that is in present day dollars too. So come year 2038, the actual in-year dollars would be closer to $6, equates to $3.50 a month. Do you want to have any discussion on this, Laura, or should we just move on? And
we do the next topic. We're going to talk about governance changes and scope changes in the Delta Conveyance Authority. So this might be a good moment to pause if there's any specific questions on these numbers or the business case, and then if a break is needed, maybe now is a good time, or we could forge on a little bit more, depending on the board's pleasure.
Right. Why don't we poll the board, see if they have any clarification questions or comments?
John Weed, one quick comment. This is 40% of our water supply, even though it's 1% of the total state, but for us it's 40%.
Thank you, Director Wee. Any other directors have clarification questions or comments?
No.
All right, then I am actually going to ask the public if they have any clarification, any questions. I will definitely give you a chance to make your comment, but if you have any questions, this is the time to ask. If you have a question, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. I am not seeing any questions. If you're joining us by phone, please speak up. Oh, I see Fred has his hand up. Fred, can you, actually this one I'm going to do it a little bit differently since there are multiple people. Can you indicate if you are one of our customers, live within the district, and if you don't mind, beside identifying yourself, if you wish to share your address on record also. So 1, are you one of our customers? Are you our customer? And 2, if you wish to share your address on record, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Fred. Yes, I'm a current ACWD customer.
Thank you.
I'm about 1 mile from your headquarters.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
I was just trying to do a little computation there. So it's 15.9 million at 1.15%. That's about $182 million. I think there's like about 85,000 customers or so. Is that about right? So that comes out to about over $2,100 per customer. I suppose that's spread over 2 years or 20 years, which comes out to about $2 or so per month.
30-year financing.
Yeah, well, I didn't do the exponential to. This is straight straight division. So is that kind of roughly where we're at? Did I describe that well enough?
It sounds about right. We don't approach it that way because we have to pay the interest on it.
Yeah, I didn't do the interest calculation. So. Thank you. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing Director Weed's name earlier.
Thank you, Fred. Any other clarification questions from members of the public? And Fred, okay. Mr. Cannon.
Yeah, I mean, just following on Fred's computation, yeah, he's correct. It's $182 million. I think where this number, Fred, is coming from is the debt service, assuming 3%. on it. The debt service on $182 million is 5.46 million. And if you divide by your rough estimate of 85,000, that's where you'll see most of this from. The question I have, or the clarification, this 15, so the proposal tonight, if I understand the item, is for the board to enter into an agreement where we would be participating at 1.15%. Is that really what it is? And therefore we'd be committing to $182.5 million. Is that really the gist of tonight's this item 5.9?
And before staff answer a question, Mr. Cannon, please identify yourself, indicate if you are one of our customers, if you live within the district, and address of record, please.
Yes, Ken Nishimura, I am a customer. I am live in the district, and my address is on the record is on the public record with the district.
Thank you, sir. Staff, response?
Great, great question. So while we're asking the board tonight to approve a participation level of 1.15%, that would be used to go into the agreement in principle that for a future contract. But at this time, the 1.15% will only be used to allocate the planning funding for the next couple of years. So we're not committing to the full amount at this time. And so I'll try and, as we wrap up into the recommendations portion of the presentation, I'll try and be clear on that. So folks can see.
Thank you, Ms. Heides. Fred, do you have additional question for the board? If not, can you put your hand down? Thank you. Whoops. Fred, do you have additional question? Your hand popped back up. All right. So with that, any other members of the public wish to address the board? And please raise your hand in the Zoom app. If you joined us by phone, please speak up. I'm not seeing any. Then I am going to ask the directors a question. Would you wish to take a break, or do you want to just power through and finish this item? I'm not hearing anything. Then I am going to take it as I get to make the decision that Ms. Heides, that's finished. The item, please.
All right, we're going to keep going here then. Okay, next we'll be talking about the Delta Conveyance project scope and governance changes. So just a quick status update on the planning efforts for the project. The CEQA scoping process solicited comments on potential impacts and alternatives. DWR is currently screening the project alternatives. They're looking at a reasonable range of potentially feasible alternatives that avoid or substantially reduce potentially significant impacts. They will be refining the proposed project and alternatives. They'll develop physical environmental footprint and operational criteria for environmental analysis. Then they'll refine the impact analysis approach and methods. This gives an overview of the Delta Conveyance project schedule. So you see we're here in 2020 on the left, and the administrative draft of an environmental impact report, environmental impact statement is in process. That won't be available till mid-2021. And then you can see the blue bars kind of domino with the remaining portions of the environmental impact report and CEQA process going through 2023. At the same time, there's a number of other permits that would be required for a Delta Conveyance project. So the other environmental processes you see here in green show the timelines for those additional permits and approvals to be pursued. So that will not be complete until 2024. So as you can see, it's about a 4-year timeline of planning processes at this time.
Laura, this is Director Sethy.
Yes.
If I may just add to this, for purposes of the public that are attending our meeting, I'm a member of the Delta Conveyance Finance Authority, which has 11 board members representing the potential investors in the Delta Conveyance project. And DWR filed a validation action at the beginning of August. We've been told that we have a pretty good judge in the Sacramento Superior Court who's familiar with large-scale public financings. And the shortest period to add to your schedule there is about 1.5 years to get a determination from the court. And it could be as long as 5 years. So that has to be factored into our planning horizon.
Great, thank you. And I should note that what I'm sharing is information on the planning that has come through the state water contractors and DWR as to the current planning schedules. So this slide here, you'll see on the bottom, the orange shows the planning activities that we talked about briefly. And up here on the top, you'll see the variety of different agency board actions that would be taking place at our agency and others that would be participating. So through December, we are looking at sort of a phase of looking to approve planning costs for the next couple of years. So that would be a funding agreement for planning costs that we're considering tonight. Agencies will be reviewing the Delta Conveyance Agreement in principle and potentially making updates to the DCA agreement. So that's all happening now. And then there would be sort of an interim period. And then later in post 2023 is when project participation would be firmed up, and we would be asked at that time to approve the project and a contract amendment for conveyance. So just to review briefly, the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority and their role, you see the DCA here in the middle, and they operate under the oversight of DWR and the DCA. They do engineering work to inform environmental review and planning processes. They identify potential engineering and design strategies to avoid and/or minimize impacts. And they're assisting in the public outreach and public participation, and in particular, the stakeholder engagement activities. They work very closely with DWR to provide work products and receive oversight from DWR. They have their own board of directors that look at the fiduciary integrity of the DCA and ensure meeting legal requirements and all of that. It also provides a forum for public participation via board and committee meetings. The public water agencies, oops, oh, my mouse, sorry. The public water agencies down here at the bottom, participate and provide some technical expertise as well, and as collaborating and contributing to the public participation. So this is sort of the interplay between the various entities here. And just so you're familiar with some of the governance changes that are being proposed for the DCA, sorry, it's tricky mouse. So the governance is the DCA governance. This is looking at changes to the board of directors, potentially for the Delta Conveyance Authority, looking to change what's currently a 5-member board to 7-member board. What's being considered, and this copy is included in your board packet, to convert the existing non-state water project capacity and at-large state water contractor seats on the current board to 2 different seats. One seat would be for the class 2 members, except the Santa Clara Valley Water District. And then the other seat would be a combined seat for classes, what we call 3, 5, and 7, which are just a few of the other regions that receive water from the state water project. So the contractors in those regions that are participating would be represented by that seat. And I do want to just take one moment to note that 1 seat for class 2 members besides Santa Clara Valley Water District means that seat will be shared between ourselves and Zone 7 Water Agency. And just a quick note that we have had just some informal discussions amongst staff that we would look to have sort of an informal arrangement, most likely to rotate that representation between ourselves and Zone 7 with a director and an alternate, and rotate that every year or so.
So Laura, if I may, just so that the board understands that, so on any particular year, it would be, likely a board member as the representative with a staff person from the same agency as an alternate. And then when it's Zone 7's turn, it would be likely a board member and a staff, but there's flexibility. We can do it any way. But we thought it would be best to have if there's a board member and a staff person from the same agency, as opposed to have a board member from, say, ACWD and then a staff person from Zone 7. It's just not as good for continuity.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. So moving on, there would be 2 additional at-large seats for Class 8 members, and Class 8 is a large group of the Southern California agencies, that not including Metropolitan. And then there would continue to be 1 seat each for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, their existing state water project seat. Oops, I'm so sorry about this mouse, you guys. Okay. And then another seat for Kern County Water Agency and another for Santa Clara Valley Water District. The other change to the DCA Joint Powers Agreement would be on reconsideration of the budget. The board would be able to do that on some contract items if 70% of the contracted proportionate share of the project requested that it be reconsidered. So for example, if we're 1.15%, they would need 70% of all the participation to request a reconsideration of the budget.
Hi, Laura, Director Sethy. What's the situation with Kern County Water Agency right now? They have, as far as I know, have not made any financial commitment.
Correct. And I know as we are going through this with our board and making our decisions, they are continuing to do the same, going through the same process, because they have a number of member agencies. They are having to review everything with their member agencies to decide on participation, to then decide on their overall participation. That's my understanding of their process. So I don't believe that is 100% settled at this time. Any other quick questions? Okay, the officers would be selected by the board still on the Delta Conveyance Authority board. And so we're being asked to review and consider the updated Joint Powers Agreement for approval tonight. And I've just gone over a few things, but the whole agreement is in your packet. So the DCA focus in the near term, they've completed critical work to inform the footprint and analysis for the EIR that's needed for the EIR process. The revised planning schedule is 4 years, as we talked about, instead of 2 that was previously envisioned. The Stakeholder Engagement Committee is a critical piece and will continue under the DCA, the DCA's work, and the DCA board will continue to meet periodically. Some near-term changes in scope include that the public water agencies providing planning funding many of them are definitely feeling the need to be prudent with public dollars given COVID-19 and other challenges that brings. The DCA scope will be revised to focus on the environmental support and the Stakeholder Engagement Committee in the near term. Once the project's ready for the design and construction phase, the DCA will again be fully re-engaged to participate, and the changes aren't anticipated to impact the overall planning schedule for the project. So just a quick look ahead of what the DCA itself will be doing and its annual budgets. So you can see with the graphic here, a significant focus on the EIR activities and continued work to support those activities. And I won't go into detail on this, but I'm happy to answer questions if they come up. So the total planning cost for 2020 through 2024, and this includes the cost for the DCA and for DWR's work to support the Delta Conveyance project. You can see they're estimating about $331.5 million. That's actually a savings of what was previously planned for those 4 years, given the scope changes we just mentioned. And to sort of true up funding as well, 4 different state contractor agencies provided $9.2 million in advance of the agreement in principle to support the Delta Conveyance project planning in 2020. So that's going to be credited to those agencies over 4 years. So the total needed from all of the Delta Conveyance project participants is a grand total of $340.7 million. And ACW's share of that is estimated at about 3.5 million over the next 4 years, which is our percentage share minus a credit that's been given for reallocation of previous gap funds that we've provided to DWR for planning. So now we'll jump into the agreements that are for consideration tonight. So first, we'll talk about the participation factor for the agreement in principle to inform the State Water Project Delta Conveyance contract amendment. And we're proposing a participation level of 1.15%. And then we'll talk about the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority JPA agreement, and then the funding agreement for DCF planning costs. So the agreement in principle.
Hey, Laura,
yes.
another quick question. Do you have a breakdown? You don't have to produce it right now, but do you have a breakdown of the participation level for all of the other participants that one could look at?
You know what, I don't have it handy, and everybody is going to their boards mostly this month to firm up what that table is going to look like. So that's something I could locate after, if that would be of interest.
Right, and Director Weed and I joined the Exploratory Water Supply Committee meeting for Santa Clara Valley Water District on Monday. I know you were a participant as well. So we got to see what their share is, but be interesting to take a look at all of the agencies and what their participation level is at some point. Thank you.
Sure. So the agreement in principle itself, just to give you a few brief highlights, the whole thing was included in the board packet for your information. The way it's set up is it's with an option to opt out of the Delta Conveyance costs and benefits. We also have the option to assume additional costs and benefits. The effective date will be on or after the contract extension billing transition date. So that's the financial arrangements that have been previously worked out. Once that transition occurs, this will definitely be after that. The costs and Delta Conveyance water supply are allocated based on the DCF participation table that's in that actual agreement in principle, and that will be filled out by each of the contractors as they make their approvals with their boards. The AIP adopts a pay-as-you-go billing provisions for both the capital and minimum components of our bills that we pay. And you can see just the agreement in principle negotiation timeline took place over 2019 and has been finished here in 2020. And sorry, my mouse is, okay, whoops. Okay, the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority JPA agreement. We're considering tonight amendments to the agreement to implement the DCA governance changes that I reviewed earlier in the presentation. There will also potentially be future amendments to the JPA bylaws to reflect the new JPA agreement. Those are not being considered tonight, just the JPA agreement itself. And then the third thing for consideration, the planning funding agreement for the $340.7 million and true up for the next 4 years. The agreement is set up to authorize contributed funds to be spent on DCA invoices consistent with the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement and DWR Delta Conveyance Office environmental planning costs. The funding agreement does allow for customization of contributed funds and provides flexibility to provide additional funds without amendment to the agreement in the future. And so the funding agreement does have these different options, and I've underlined what we have set up to recommend for our agreement. We would have the funding be provided on the statement of charges, pay-go, not as a lump sum payment ahead. We would authorize or the agreement has the option of either authorizing the entire 4 years or only the first 2 years. And what staff's recommending is that we authorize the first 2 years at this time, but we've noted the additional 2 years funding amounts in the agreement so that we could get additional board authorization later to do that, should the board choose to do so. And the agreement itself will allow for additional funds to be contributed upon demonstrating that your board has authorized additional funds. And so tonight's staff recommendation is rather long and lengthy because it covers all 3 of these different things that we're trying to approve in one. And I should note that similar to the previous item 5.8, this does help us to meet strategic plan goal 2.2, protecting imported water supplies. And so with that, I will go ahead and read the staff recommendation, which is to adopt a resolution authorizing a level of participation of 1.15% in the Delta Conveyance Project. 2, authorizing the general manager to execute a funding agreement with the Department of Water Resources for environmental planning costs associated with the Delta Conveyance Project in an amount up to $1,293,621. 3, authorizing the general manager to execute an amended and restated joint powers agreement forming the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Joint Powers Authority. And 4, determining the actions are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I should probably reiterate the 1.15% is being used to determine the planning funding at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Heides. Do I have any clarification questions from the board?
I have one.
All right, Director Sethy.
Laura, what gives us the confidence that we can determine the actions are exempt from CEQA?
Good question. So, and I believe there's some more detail on the staff report on this topic, but we're really only the CEQA exemption that we're looking at really only exempts the board's action tonight. So we're not taking CEQA action on the building of the Delta Conveyance Project, but on these specific actions, 1, 2, and 3 that the board is taking tonight. And so we've consulted, with district council on how to best take the appropriate CEQA action related with that.
Can any one entity or party challenge us on this determination? Maybe that's a question for legal counsel.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Miyake, do you have any comments on that?
Sure, I'm happy to answer the question. So the CEQA determination was first a recommendation by DWR and state water contractors that this is a recommendation by them. We had our environmental counsel look at it as well. They concurred with this. And the reason for that is because this is really following up on administrative and maintenance activities. It's planning, it's fiscal contributions. It's not, it's no construction is being authorized by this particular action. Can somebody challenge us on a CEQA thing? I mean, anybody can challenge it, but in looking at all the documents, we feel pretty confident that this project is exempt from CEQA.
Thank you, Mr. Miyake. Any other clarification questions from the board? If not, I have a request for a short break. I'm not hearing any questions. I do have a question for Ms. Heides and Mr. Neiser, either one of you. Can we opt out? Is there off-ramp in the future if we choose to participate?
So if for example, we chose not to approve this today, that would be essentially opting out. We would not be able to get any of the benefits of the project moving forward. I would say today's action would only really approve the planning funding. So, 2 years, 4 years, more years down the road, when we go to sign a contract amendment, at that time, we could the district could choose to not sign the contract amendment. And then, there would be no provision for DWR to charge us for the project, but at the same time, we would not be able to get any of the benefits either.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
All right.
that-
John, wait, if I could follow on the question, please. If we do
Sure.
not participate, does that put our participation in the state water project in jeopardy and 40% of our water supply in jeopardy?
So it does not put that in jeopardy because the state water project and our current allocation will stay as it is. But as things change down the road and as Mr. Nizer talked about, the reliability, we may start losing reliability. And so we would just have to follow that glide path of reliability loss and not be able to keep any of the benefits that may come to all the contractors that choose to participate and maintain their reliability or get additional water supply.
I'd be interested in
Laura,
getting-
I'd like to just add on, the best guess we would have is the data set, which Laura showed that says, what supply would be without the project. Presumably that's what we would get. And pretty much all of those scenarios that Laura showed earlier are absolutely insufficient supply for ACWD. We would need to develop a new water supply.
We would or would not?
We would not have enough just to meet an average year supply. We wouldn't have enough reliable supply between San Francisco, the state, and our local supplies. We would need a new water supply.
And I'd be interested in getting a briefing on how you differentiate this part of the project from the overall water supply coming from the Delta. It's beyond me, but thank you.
I would reiterate that I had the same question as Director Weed.
Maybe this would be helpful, given the train of thought being expressed here. Ms. Heides, Mr. Nizer, would it be safe to say that what we're requesting the board this evening is to authorize funds that would allow further planning, further permitting to occur, so that the potential benefits of the project and the costs are better defined down the road for eventual district consideration of participation in the actual construction project?
Very well said. And because all this modeling is preliminary and information is preliminary, we do hope to have more, and we anticipate we will have more information a few years down the road that will help us firm up our analysis.
So really what we're suggesting is that we're asking the board to consider anteing up here so that you can remain in the game and we can get you additional information, because it is a very important game for our agency.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Any other questions from the board? If not, I was going to say we could take a break until 9:15. Is that enough time for a quick bathroom break?
Maybe 8:15?
You mean 8:15?
8:15. Sorry, my computer clock hasn't changed yet. It still says 9:08. Darn. Okay, 8:15, please. And Fred, I see your hand and you'll be the next one up. All right, so let's take a break. Come back at 8:15, please. Questions and comments, and Mr. Warren is going to help me keep track of who should be on the list and the timing. I'll give each speaker 3 minutes to ask your question or make your comments. And when your name's called, please identify yourself. Indicate that if you live in the district or not, and if you wish to do so, please let us know your address of record, but that is definitely optional. So with that, I believe, most important part, please raise your hand in the Zoom app if you wish to make a comment or have a question on this item. So I think Fred is the first hand up.
Yeah, I believe Fred is.
Thank you. I'm Fred Obermeyer. I'm a ACWD customer, and I'm about a mile from your headquarters. So how did the staff come up with 1.15%? Could have been 1.2, could have been 1%. How did it come up with that number?
Is that okay to go ahead and answer that, President?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
great, sorry, I'm finding my mute button here. Very good question. So we are 1% right now of the overall state water project. And so the idea is that we would pick up 1% of the Delta Conveyance project. And then, as I mentioned, there's a number of agencies that are not going to participate for whatever reason, based on their location or other circumstances. And so there's a remaining bit that would get picked up in theory by all the other contractors. So the 1.15% is an estimated reasonable share of the leftovers that the remaining contractors would pick up.
Shouldn't it somewhat relate to our consumption estimates?
So that's just happens to be the way they've calculated it at this point, is based on our participation in the project.
Is this untreated water? Will this require additional treatment? Is it hard water?
It's the same, comes through the same system, and we still would treat it at our treatment plant.
Would it be considered hard water?
It's not
raw water.
raw, it is raw water.
But the hardness is moderate. It's not considered hard water.
Yeah, Hetch Hetchy is very soft water by comparison.
Correct.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
This is Director Sethy. If I might just add in a little bit here, because you may not be aware of this, Mr. Obermeyer. The Alameda County Water District, the residents of the Tri-City area, Washington Township, voted to become the first investors in the state water project. So we were the original investor in construction of the Oroville Dam, the tallest dam in the United States. And we are responsible for 1% of the entire state water project from Oroville all the way down to Southern California, including all the operations and maintenance. It's not just the purchase of water. We are an owner in the system.
Thank you, Director Sethy. And thank you, Fred. Please put your hand down if you are done with your questioning. And let's see, next, I believe I have Mr. Fajol, Lane Fajol.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lane. I am not part of the ACW in the district, but I am I'm from one of the communities along the Delta that will be most affected by the Delta Conveyance project. And I'm really incredibly concerned about funding the planning and research of the Delta Conveyance project. It doesn't seem like the figures represented here tonight were very indicative of how actually harmful it will be to the region. The Delta Conveyance project doesn't address any vulnerabilities in the Delta levee system, so seismic vulnerabilities are not really addressed. It doesn't address any vulnerabilities in the state water infrastructure project. There are a lot of other alternatives that can be carried out to better our state's water supply and Alameda water supply, and I don't believe this is it. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fajol. Let's see, we have Osha Meserve next. And I will apologize if I mispronounce your name. I'll try to do my best, but please.
I think you did it well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. My name is Osha Meserve, and I'm an attorney from Sacramento. I've been representing Delta interests for 12 years in the fight to save the Delta from peripheral canal, the twin tunnels, BDCP, and now Delta Conveyance Project. It's sad for me to hear a neighboring community like Alameda talking about taking half the Sacramento River and putting it into a pipe as though that's a good future and resilience. The Delta Tunnel, in fact, would wreak a lot of devastation on the Delta, but it also doesn't really get you to resilience. And one of the problems with the planning process that has happened is there's really hasn't been a look at any other alternatives. I think the slides that your board saw really never touch on what other ways could Alameda County make sure to provide water supplies into the future. And there are a lot of other options out there. Unfortunately, none of the alternatives being studied in this environmental review process are being included, like keeping up the levees, which obviously Alameda County is subject to sea level rise itself. And if there's an earthquake, it would be awful in Alameda County. I was there for the '89 quake. So these are all issues that take a lot more than just a tunnel. And there's a lot of options that we're seeing with brackish water desalination and all sorts of ways that we can address future needs besides routing the river into a tunnel. I think also I heard a lot of talk waiting for this item about property taxes. And I think people should be aware that the State Water Project condition or Article 34 says that if there's not enough money from rates, then you shall levy those property taxes to provide payment. So your property tax rates are at risk in your county for this project, which is a mega project, which always goes over budget. So I know now maybe it's just a few $1 million that you're thinking about spending, but I would submit that that money would be better spent on finding truly resilient ways to address water supplies, and also not throwing your neighboring communities in the Delta, Sacramento County, San Joaquin County, all those residents under the footprint of these major infrastructure pieces, under the bus. So I would ask that you take a second look, take a little more time. I think that a few $1 million is actually a lot to spend to find out more. I think if this project was a good project, it probably would have been built in the 80s when it first came to the vote of the people. And it's never been a good project, and it's not now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I believe I have Salam Asfal.
President Huang,
Yes,
if I may just say something here, I feel I need to insert this here. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Meserve. I've met you before up in Sacramento. I just want to make you aware of the fact that over the last 30 years, we have done a lot of work on water conservation in our district. Our per capita usage has dropped dramatically during that period of time. We also have the only brackish water desalination plant in Northern California, operational for 17 years now, which contributes about 20% to our water supply. And so I just want to make you aware of the fact that we've made investments on behalf of our ratepayers to, look at other alternative water supplies too. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
Thank you, Director Sethy. Salam Asfal, please.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to announce our concerns. My name is Salamullah Asfal. I am among the areas that will be impacted by the DCP. I attend Heritage High School, therefore I am not in the Alameda Water District, but I present myself on the behalf of the nonprofit Project Climate. Although there aren't many environmental implications, approving research is one step closer to adopting this harmful project. The DCP, even as a single tunnel version of the previous water fix project, would be a massive construction project that would seriously impact boaters' access to the Delta for years to come. Construction and commissioning of the overall conveyance project is projected to take approximately 13 years. During construction, major waterways and tributaries could be closed to recreational boaters. The project announcement notes that probable effects may include this displacement and reduction of recreation sites, as well as effects on the marine traffic. Some problems that arise with this DCP is the absence of a plan to ensure that the Delta infrastructure will not only be preserved, but improved, the lack of surety that the plan will address the threat that climate change and increased water transfer pose to the amount and quality of water in the Delta. So by approving this vote, you are choosing to neglect the health concerns of the version of water. This project still threatens further damage to salmon and other fish runs and the health of the Delta. By approving this vote, we are one step closer to denying the well-being of others for economic gain. The future generation implores you to view this issue in a different angle and look beyond the economic revenue. By furthering this project, we are ignoring the intrinsic value that the Delta has to others and are one step closer to reducing the biodiversity of our own Delta. Thank you for considering. I appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Asfal. Next, I have Ms. Alexi Lindeman, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alexi Lindeman, and like Salam, I am from Heritage High School and would like to express my disapproval of the DCP. I know the funding research for this project will probably be approved tonight, but I sincerely hope that as the plans for DCP move forward, you deeply consider the numerous consequences that this project will bring and other alternatives. As we know, California faces water scarcity and has depleted many of its natural water sources for domestic, agriculture, and industrial uses. While this project may seem beneficial in the short term, the consequences of destroying biodiversity in California's Delta will catch up and cost far more than whatever short-term benefits it brings. Nature is something that cannot be replaced or replicated. It is priceless and should be protected more than ever, considering what little of it remains today. Humans and domesticated animals make up 96% of mammals on Earth, and only 4% are wildlife. We cannot afford to lose any more biodiversity. As mentioned earlier, the Delta is home to endangered species, and if the DCP goes through, it will further devastate fragile populations. I know I love going to the Delta and walking on trails, hearing the birds and seeing a snapshot of what California looked like before it was turned down and replaced by a concrete jungle. Although I have not been there lately, I have frequently visited the nature preserves near my house, Contra Loma. Unfortunately, every year I see the water levels fall, algae growth increase, litter carelessly strewn on the ground, and the overall decline of the preserve. I would hate to see this happen to the Delta, as more water is derivative from this irreplaceable gemstone. When I am older, I would like to return to the Delta with my family and reminisce about our childhood. If this project continues forward, I worry that the Delta will no longer match the wonderful place that we all know now, nor will it ever be restored to its former scintillating beauty. Thank you for listening to me tonight, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Ms. Lindman. Next, I have Ms. Olivia Johnson, please.
Hello, my name is Olivia Johnson, and I'm also a part of Project Climate at Heritage, and that's a nonprofit dedicated to mitigating the impacts of climate change. I came here today to express my opposition to this vote. It may seem like this vote will not directly contribute to the disastrous environmental consequences this tunnel will bring. However, a chain reaction can spark from the small actions we are taking today, more specifically, what this vote will cause. This research and small funds will contribute to the bigger picture of this tunnel, a tunnel that will harm our homes, our kids, and our future in the Bay Area. I'm worried not only for myself, I'm worried for the ecosystem in which I grew up in, as well as a long history of cultures that were built around this precious Delta. This vote has the possibility to erase the beautiful history that the Delta ecosystem has gifted to us. We should serve to protect the Delta and the home that has been crafted for us. And the weight that this vote carries is heavier than we may assume. Thank you for listening, and I hope you think of every negative consequence this vote will carry.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And I'm assuming, sorry, I forgot to remind you, I'm assuming since you're with the Project Climate, I assume you're also not a customer of ours, correct?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any other members of the public wish to address the board? Mr. Ken. Sir, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Ken Nishimura. I am a customer of the district, and my address is a matter of record for the district as well. As the State Water Project does represent 40% of the district's water supply, and tonight's action is really keeping a seat at the table, as the general manager had indicated. With due respect to the previous commenters, I do support the item before the board, with the understanding that if the situation does not warrant the district interest at the time to adopt the contract, the district may opt out. A couple of questions following on Director Sethy's question regarding the participant levels of the other state water project agencies. What happens if the total doesn't sum to 100%? We already see that 6 south of Delta agencies have already bailed out. So there are only 18 left. The second question is following on Director Weed and Akbari's question. Regardless of the district's participation in this project, we would remain state water project participants. So if the district were to opt out, what would happen? Would the state water project allocations change such that participants would get a higher allocation versus those who opt not to participate? I think understanding this point is critically important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Staff, Mr. Neiser, Ms. Heides, do you have a response?
Sure. So on the first question of what happens if agencies don't approve and we don't get to 100%, I think at that point, the agencies that are participating would have to have a follow-up conversation on how that gap could be filled. So at this point, the hope is that we will get 100% participation based on what's planned. And the second question, remind me, that was on the topic of.
Yeah, ACWD would remain a state water project participant with or without participation in this project. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if the district were to opt out, would the state water project change the way they allocate water? For example, you know, in an year that we would expect 50% of our allocation, would they say, well, you're not a participant, therefore instead of 50, you get 25? Is that what's going to happen? I mean, what is the actual impact of not participating?
Right. So the idea is that the current state water project contract and the allocation would remain the way it is now, and then any additional water due to the project, due to the Delta Conveyance project, would then be allocated only to the participants in the project. So does that make sense?
Yes, I think I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, if I may help out here to answer the question, I think you actually had it in some earlier slides where you were showing what the contribution is over and above current water supplies from the project, the orange part of the bars that you were showing. So that's what we're actually participating in over and above our 1% allocation today.
Correct. But just to clarify, that those are preliminary modeling results that demonstrate the possible benefits under different scenarios. We don't know what the actual scenario will be. So, you know, I don't want anyone to take those graphs later and say this is what we're going to get, because we're not sure what we're going to get and how it may fall into the range of possibilities that were presented.
Yeah, so just for public benefit here, when we were at the very depth of the drought, our allocation from the State Water Project dropped down to 0. So we didn't have any water coming into our community, which normally represents 40% of our water supply. So we had to go through drastic cutbacks and everything. So that's one of the areas of protection that we're looking for. Even in dry years with the tunnel, we're not adding that much extra water to the system.
This is John Weed. I think this requires a little more review, and I've asked staff to investigate how you separate out the benefits of the tunnel when it becomes the primary source of water for the State Water Project. I fear that absent a bypass, whether it be one time the Perfield Canal or the tunnels now, you're going to have a seasonal water supply coming out of the Delta due to sea level rise. So you need a bypass. The Perfield Canal 40 years ago was 5% of the cost of this tunnel and 15,000 CFS, as opposed to the 6,000 CFS of this project. And moreover, when we look at the total cost, the South Bay Aqueduct will be even more expensive for us to retrofit than will be the 1.6, our share of the $1.6 billion tunnel. So we have some major issues to look at and put into overall context. And to suggest that we could opt out of this, not having serious implications on our 40% of our water supply, I find bewildering. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lee. Yes, Director Sethy. So I just want to say that we do have in the chat box from Ms. Meserve that says.
I was saying, to add to what Director Weed is saying, we have potentially $1 billion cost on refurbishing the South Bay Aqueduct. That has a lot more financial impact to the district than does our participation in construction of the Delta Conveyance project. And so we need to factor that into our future financial considerations.
Thank you, Director Sethy. And I was just about to say that Ms. Osha Meserve in the chat box stated that ACWD would continue to receive water from the existing South Delta pumps with and without the tunnel. Thank you, comment noted. And I am not seeing any more hands up. Salam Asphalt, do you have additional questions or comments for the board?
I do actually have another comment. So tonight I've come to represent the younger generation. Usually people at our school do not know about the DCP or Delta tunnels that usually occur. And on behalf of the future generation that will be uptaking this project in the future and will be responsible for the environmental consequences that that it will have, I implore you guys to really think this through and realize the environmental consequences that this DCP will have. So I just want to make it clear that on the behalf of Project Climate and everything we've learned, and even our public education systems, that this DCP will be environmentally hurtful, as we've seen by the seismic reliability, the reduction of biodiversity. And I just want to make it clear that if you guys do reconsider to vote no on this DCP, because we are imploring you to, we recognize the negative environmental consequences. It may seem at an economic standpoint that this is beneficial, but if we look long-term, if we've taken a different light on this, this is not benefiting our future. It is not helping our future generations. It is disregarding the health benefits that it will have on communities like the ones I live in. So on the behalf of Project Climate, I want to declare that we do not favor the DCP. And yeah.
Thank you very much.
I agree with Project Climate.
I also do agree with Project Climate as well.
Thank you. So, Mr. Fajol, I think that's you that I heard, correct? Was that the comment you wish to make?
No, I was hoping to add one other thing. There's been a lot of talk about how influential the Delta Conveyance project, how harmful it would be on ecosystems. It would also be incredibly damaging to human health and human populations along the Delta. Delta area has some of the highest poverty rates in the state, and the area most affected by the tunnel is largely made up of communities of color, specifically along the North Delta. Indigenous communities who call the Delta region the home have staunchly opposed the creation of the DCP as well, as it puts salmon populations, the basis of a prominent industry for indigenous peoples in Northern California, at great risk. Water quality would, of course, also decline with the Delta Conveyance project, as there is less fresh water to flush out salt impurities, and harmful algal blooms and increased air pollution would also occur, harming these predominantly low-income communities of color. It seems clear to me that you are obviously, you value being a stakeholder in the State Water Project, and I understand that. It would be fantastic though if we could table this vote and vote know on it later. Continue discussions about how this would affect the actual Delta region at hand. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I agree.
Do I have any?
I agree.
Thank you. Do I have any other members of the public that wish to address the board that's currently on the phone? If you wish to address the board, please speak up. All right, hearing none, let's move this back to the directors. Directors, comments, last minute questions?
I guess I'll go first then, with comments. Is that all right?
Of course.
Okay, Director Gunther here. You know, the benefits of Zoom are fascinating tonight. And I certainly appreciate your presence for the friends and, you know, the folks over in the Delta. It would have been a long drive to come over to our meeting. And so there is some benefit to Zoom meetings. That said, I would like to point out that this isn't really the first time we've looked at this. We've looked at other scenarios. As was pointed out by Director Sethy, we have the only operational and desal plant, brackish water desal plant in Northern California. It's been running for 17 years. We water bank with semi-tropic. We have a rather good, we've been running water recharge to take care of our own aquifers since I'd say maybe the 1960s, I guess, is when we first started the projects, and we continue to this day. In addition to that, we are a very environmentally mindful district. We have a project, I think it's up to about an $80 million fish ladder project that's going to open up the Niles, the Alameda Creek watershed to steelhead restoration. So I've always been supportive of this project. I'm sorry, I know that you don't like that, but I'd also, though, the project, if we build this, we shouldn't hurt the Delta. Now, the fact is, though, the levees out there, the question becomes, is it, you know, the responsibility of who? And this system should have been built years ago. And environmentally, there's some debate as to the environmental impact of this plan. In fact, there's several studies that appear that it would actually improve it. Your water flows wouldn't be reversed. Now, could it harm the salmon? Possibly. I don't know if it's going to harm it any worse than it already is. The other problem we have is, you know, there's certainly an environmental impact statement to it. I'm losing, I just lost my thought for a second there, but no, you know, Contra Costa, for instance, their location of their intakes, we've had to take that into account. This is part of a multiple plan throughout the state to handle our water system. This could be very instrumental in assisting the communities, disadvantaged communities down in the valley. That's yet to be seen. You really need to have a reliable system, one that's going to make it, one that's going to survive. I've been without water. It's one of the things I ran on. The fact when I was in the Coast Guard, I didn't have water. So I know what it's like not to have water. I know what it's like to have to take a sea shower. And no, I don't want to do that. But this district, our district, has taken this approach. We have studied this, and this pans out. We've looked at Delta desal. We have looked at water reuse, indirect potable reuse. Some of these things are still in our plans, but this is one of the ones that's very important to us. That's part of the problem when you look at this only from tonight's presentation. We've already looked at those plans, which is why it's so easy for a lot of us to say, yeah, let's do this, because the cost and the impacts. Desal, by the way, is not the golden the golden gauntlet. Desal has a big problem, and it's not energy, it's brine. We know that. We've been running the plant for 17 years. So we have a lot of this. I appreciate the folks from Project Climate getting on, letting us know what you feel. I wish I agreed. I saw the Sierra Club's letter. I disagree with the Sierra Club on this. I agree with the Sierra Club on a lot of things, but this one I think they may be off on. I hope I'm right. I think I'm right. I've been doing this for a while. So I appreciate your being here tonight, but I wanted to put out that, you know, we've already looked at a lot of this stuff, and we've been looking at this. I don't know how many presentations Thomas Nizer has given us. We've looked at multiple supply issues. We ourselves have multiple supplies. We continue to look at that. But this is very vital too, if we're going to continue banking with groundwater banking in the valley, which will help the groundwater supplies in the valley to the south. There's a lot of important things going on here. As far as, let's say, down south, all the way to LA, they're doing remarkable things with water reuse down there. I just saw some on an aqua program a couple of weeks ago, some of the stuff that's going on down there. So the state is trying. We're not just sitting back saying we're going to take more water from the Sacramento River. No. But we've looked at this. Our plan, we're not even looking at extra water from this. We're just hoping to get what we can, what we've been trying to get, because without it, we really put that in jeopardy. It's not like we're going to be, the problem is we get a certain allocation. But as Director Sethy said, in that drought, it was 0. If you can't get it through the Delta, we can't get it here. A Judge Wanger, several years ago now, shut the pumps off over an issue with a permit. They shut the system down. So it's not like we could just design this thing and say, okay, open it up, fire it up, and we're going to destroy the environment. That's not going to happen. It's not how, certainly that's not how we operate. When we built our fish ladders, we chose to work with the agencies. We chose to work with the environmental groups. We have a track record over here. And so I stand by our track record, and I'm proud of it. I'm certainly willing to hear what you have to say on the climate or the Project Climate. What are your concerns? I know the project is very concerned about what the concerns of the Delta are too. We had a presentation a while back from the construction manager. She's been out there in the community, talking to the community. We don't want to destroy the Delta communities, but we really need to shore this up. So hopefully we can all get some consensus. You probably won't like how I vote tonight. That's okay. We could agree to disagree. The Sierra Club and I are going to agree to disagree, I hope. So anyway, that's what I've got to say for right now. I think it's important.
Thank you, Director Gunther. Other directors?
Yeah, I'll go next. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything that Director Gunther said, so I'm not going to restate all of that. You know, first of all, I really appreciate all the public input that we received tonight, especially from folks who are from the Delta and younger folks, especially. I mean, myself, you know, being a little bit on the younger side of the spectrum, I always love when younger people are paying attention to these issues. There's a balancing act that I think that we're striving to achieve here. How do we balance environmental responsibility with reliability of our service to our customers? Myself, Director Gunther and Director Weed and a few others just completed an election. And one of the main topics that we were asked about in nearly every forum is how are we going to guarantee reliability not just in the next few years, but for generations to come, because we know that we are going to see significant impacts from rising sea levels, from earthquakes, and now we're seeing even more impacts from wildfires near us. And so we have to find some way of balancing, making sure that we have the water to feed our system, to make sure that our customers are receiving an adequate supply and their needs are being met while doing so in a responsible way. Director Gunther talked about the other environmental initiatives that we're taking under our wing here at the district. We're constructing fish ladders in Alameda Creek. We're looking at moving to more renewable sources of energy to run our system on. So we are trying to do as much as we can to make sure that that we are protecting the environment. And this is one area where there is going to be some disagreement between how we approach this decision and how maybe some other organizations might approach it as well, like Project Climate. But the concerns that you're sharing today are not ones that are lost on us by any means. Again, we're approaching this trying to be responsible, not just to our own customers, but to the folks who are going to be impacted by this construction project and by the impacts of Delta Conveyance on those communities as well. And so the action that we're taking tonight is to just be a part of that discussion, to continue that discussion, to make sure that we have our seat at the table and we can advocate for our concerns, which in many ways are going to align with concerns that you all might have as well. And so I myself am going to vote in favor of staff's recommendation tonight, but I want to reiterate that that in no way are we disregarding the concerns that you all have shared with us tonight. And I do greatly appreciate you all coming out and spending time with us tonight to express those concerns, because it provides a little bit more color for us when we do make these decisions, and they're decisions that I don't think any of us take lightly, especially for a project like this where we're talking about providing reliability for water to millions of people across the state, and spending billions of dollars to be able to do so. So it's definitely one that we don't take lightly. And so I wanted to reiterate my appreciation for everyone who voiced their opinions tonight. And we're not going to be able to make everybody happy, but certainly we want to do what's right for our customers and for other folks who are going to be impacted by these decisions that we make.
Thank you, Director Akbari. And I just want to acknowledge that I know there are a couple of hands up from members of the public. We have moved on to the director's comment section, but I will definitely acknowledge the fact that those people who had their hand up, that they definitely want to remind us that the Delta is very important, that the climate and the environment is very important, and that we shall keep in mind the balance and the effect of our decisions. So we definitely got that. All right, with that, I know, Fred, you have your hand up, but I just closed the comment period. Director Weed, Director Sethy?
This is John Weed. As was commented on earlier, this district was an early sign-on, the first sign-on to the State Water Project. State Water Project from its beginning had a bypass around the Delta in its plans. The board supported the Perfield Canal. At 80% of the electorate voted against it. But if we already use the Delta as a water supply, it's important that we find a way to address the water quality. And the issues have gotten even more stressful with unimpaired flows on the San Joaquin, the issues of the Delta smelt, and a number of other items have come by. Our alternatives are much more expensive. Recycled water or desalination of the bay I believe it'd be at least 5 times higher in cost, and 80% of that cost would be energy. So I would argue that it's probably not a better environmental solution. So we're 1% of the state water project. I think we're along for the ride. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed. Director Sethy?
Yes, I don't want to repeat all the comments from the other directors. I'm in concurrence with the other thoughts here. I think Director Akbari put it best. It's a real balancing act that we're dealing with between trying to do our best to protect the environment and the Delta, and then also serving a growing and vibrant community. And we also have to remember that anyone south of the Delta really is part of Southern California. And so Zone 7 Water Agency in the Tri-Valley area, Alameda County Water District and Southern Alameda County and Santa Clara Valley Water District, we're all part of Southern California. And we're also the lifeline of water to the entire high-tech industry that's around here. Tesla is our largest industrial customer in our service area, just as an example. But the entire semiconductor industry, the computer industry, everything is reliant on a reliable source of water coming through the Delta and the South Bay Aqueduct. I appreciate all the young people that have come and expressed their opinions at our board meeting tonight. I wish I saw this more often, and attendance on other water issues as well. I was a young person at one time too, and I grew up here in this community. As a teenager, I strongly believed in the peripheral canal. I wrote articles about it in my student newspaper, in the general publication newspaper in our area too, with letters to the editor. And I have long believed that we needed what is a solution to an incomplete system. If you go back to the 1930s, 40s, 50s, when the State Water Project was under consideration in early stages of planning, there was always meant to be some kind of conveyance system around the Delta, peripheral canal, or a tunnel, or some kind of bypass. And so I have believed in this from a very early age. I do try to take into consideration all of the environmental impacts, impact to indigenous people in the Delta. I consider myself a California and local historian too. So I really appreciate and have enjoyed many of the recreational aspects of the Delta and just driving around. So I'm supportive of this. I have been my entire life, but I don't want to be dismissive of any of the very considerate thoughts that have been put forward tonight. This has been a lifetime of evaluating this and hearing opinions on all sides. And I think at the end of the day, I came closest to former Governor Brown, that we can't just look at things in our own backyard. We have to take into consideration the impact of the Delta Conveyance Project to the entire state of California, to everyone. And so just to reiterate what Director Akbari said, it really truly is a balancing act. And I'm trying to do my best as an elected person with some responsibility here over this issue to make the best determination that I can. So I will support the staff recommendations here, and I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution bullets 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Can I make a comment, sir?
Yes, I'll make a formal motion.
Can I make a comment first, Director Sethy?
Yes.
All right.
You already did. I'm sorry.
So we'll keep that in mind. You made the motion to adopt staff recommendation. So I think I'm the only director that grew up in the Delta. I actually grew up in Stockton, so I know the Delta. I love the Delta, and I'm also an environmental engineer. So I'm probably one of the director that consistently on this board saying, you know, hey, is there any off ramp? Can we get out of the state water project? I am still convinced that if we could find a reliable, cost-effective local supply, that would be much better for our customers at Alameda County Water District. With that said, we have looked high, we have looked low, we look everything from recycling, wastewater recycling to San Francisco Bay desal to expand our groundwater brackets desalination facility. We have beefed up our water conservation program just to minimize the amount of water we use. Even through all that effort, and these are all documented effort that we try again and again, we still cannot find a reliable and cost-effective local water supply. There were some comments made about perhaps not pay so much attention on capital or on finance. I understand that people tend to think the Bay Area to be very affluent. Unfortunately, if you look at our service district, we have quite a number of fixed income seniors that actually water affordability would become a big issue for them. As a director, in addition to my own personal thoughts and wants, I have to balance my customers' needs and requirements. I am still looking for off-ramp from the Delta Conveyance Project, and I will always be looking for off-ramp every time that a decision is coming in front of us. But this action before us is literally to gather more information by participating and have a seat at the table. I could definitely support that, but I am pretty sure my staff understand that I will always be asking the question, is there a better alternative? And is there an off-ramp that we could still, that another path we could go down to and still make our customers whole, protect our district, and make our water supply reliable and cost-effective. So with that, I believe we have a motion from Director Sethy. Do I have a second?
Second, John Weed.
Director Weed?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, directors. Oh,
Sorry, Mr. Warren, roll call, please.
okay. Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Gunther,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Huang.
Aye. And I would like to say thank you for our audience today, our attendees. Thank you for pleading so passionately for what you believe in. We really appreciate your time and attendance. All right. With that, we should move on. I believe we're down to item 6 reports, correct, Mr. Shaver?
Yes, that's correct, President Huang. And staff does not have any additional input on any of the reports before you this evening, but we're available to respond to questions.
All right, so let's take item 6.1 board committee reports. Do I have any questions or comments from the directors on board committee reports? I am seeing and hearing. Oh, sorry.
No, none from me.
Okay. Then 6.2 operational reports. Any comments or questions?
No.
No. Wow, that's going to make it fast. Item 6.3 staff presentation. Do we have anything today, Mr. Shaver?
Not under staff presentations, but we do have a few brief presentations that we would like to make under GM reports.
All right. So with that, then let's move on to the GM report then.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, would you please queue up the COVID-19 report?
You got it. Here we go.
I'm seeing a distorted screen. Is anybody else seeing that?
Yes.
It's very artsy.
Okay, interesting.
All right, so while Mr. Warren is fixing his screen, I assume, Mr. Shaver, you could do this without the presentation, correct?
I can, or I can try to fire up the presentation and perhaps do a share screen. If Mr. Warren will allow me to do that.
I think I got it.
Oh, I see it.
Yes.
Thank
Take a
you.
minute.
Go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
So just a brief agenda. We'll talk about the operating environment since October 8th, our current operational status and next steps. And mostly I'll focus on new information only. Next slide, please. These are the same objectives that we have been following since we created them back in March. Next slide. Okay, new information is noted in red on the slides, and I just wanted to mention that nationally, the COVID-19 statistics are becoming more grim. And my understanding is that the data for November 12th, actually this data says November 12th, but it's for the 11th, we're over 150,000 daily cases. So to put that into perspective, at the peak of the pandemic during the summer, the US was experiencing about 70,000 daily cases. And obviously the total number of deaths are going up. Statewide and countywide, we're doing much better relatively than the national perspective, but cases and deaths continue to sadly increase. Next slide. So I wanted to show this because even in California, conditions are worsening. In fact, Alameda County is now an orange level, but Contra Costa was recently downgraded to red, which is a worse condition. And then the San Diego area actually has been downgraded to purple. And Alameda County is at the threshold of being downgraded to the red phase stage as well. So next slide, please. So although we're relatively in good shape in Alameda County and stable, the trends are not looking great. And I fully expect conditions locally to worsen as a result of colder weather, people spending more time indoors, the pull of the Thanksgiving holiday, and our social needs as a species to congregate and be with others, as well as students returning from college, at least the colleges that are still open, and then generally COVID fatigue. I see it here, even at work. We are celebrating, if you will, our 8-month anniversary of activating the EOC. So 8 months, it's just becoming a grind. There's some other issues that we're dealing with, and I'm happy to say that as a result of Laura Heides and her efforts, there was a community cleanup day at the Niles Community Park today where they filled a very large dumpster, and thanks to the city of Fremont mostly, and some other agencies that were involved. So thank you, Laura, for your leadership on that issue. And then Kurt Arends continues his involvement, although it's moving slower in terms of dealing with Old Alameda Creek. Although I understand that in October, there was several efforts to go in there and at least deal with some of the trash issues. District-wide, we're not immune from the social issues that are ongoing locally and nationally. So I just wanted to let the board know that we've fully implemented what we call our DEI Council, which involves staff from all areas of the district, working with our consultant, Sharon Adams, to review and update the district's policies and practices regarding all these DEI-related issues. And And then when we have a work product to share, we'll bring that back to the board for your review. But it's definitely a bottom-up effort. It's not being driven top-down. So generally, our production facilities.
Bob, can I ask a quick question on the previous item?
Sure.
So what exactly should we be expecting will be the result of the DEI Council? Is it going to be changes to HR policy or like what do you think will be kind of the final product?
Yeah, at this point, I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure because we're still in the discussion phase. But I would expect that we will definitely update some of our HR policies and our hiring practices, and maybe come up with some new initiatives to achieve what I think are our two primary goals. And one is, I think we should be an agency that is reflective of the community that we serve, because I think we will do a better job if our demographics and other aspects of our agency are similar to the community that we serve. And the second goal I have is that ACWD is a welcoming agency where all employees feel, involved and welcome and safe to be with us. So the policies and practices that I hope that come out of this effort will further those two goals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So moving on, operationally, one thing that reduces the stress on our agency somewhat is water demands are decreasing. So if we did have an outbreak here at the district, it makes it a little easier to deal with if we say have to shut down a facility. And I just wanted to, point out that in my view, we're getting everything done, which I'm very proud about, but everything is a little more difficult. So I appreciate the board's support and understanding of that simple fact that operating in a pandemic is a little different than under normal circumstances. And I think although we've been reasonably fortunate in that most of the impacts of the pandemic in terms of people getting infected has largely, knocking on wood, passed us by. I fully expect that we should potentially see some additional impacts as we move forward. And I'm reminding employees every chance I get to remain vigilant. Because while we're doing our best to keep employees here safe at work, we do understand that people have their own lives that they are living too, and they need to be safe. One thing that we did do this year, which was interesting and a new experience, was the flu vaccinations, because we really didn't know how many employees would take advantage of the program. Since so many employees are working from home, how many would use their regular medical provider. And I'm happy to say we estimated 198 employees, as well as family members, and I understand at least one board member took advantage of this. And I thought staff did a really nice job on that. In terms of opening up, we do have a plan of what that would look like when the appropriate time comes, but I don't expect that we will be bringing back employees en masse anytime soon. We are also beginning post-COVID delinquent customer accounts planning, because with the the shut-off moratorium, although it's not a huge problem for our agency relative to some others, there will be a time where that moratorium will end. And how do we want to deal with this issue? So staff is reviewing this with other agencies, comparing notes, and I think we will come to the board with a detailed plan sometime in the near future to allow policy input on this, because there will be policy related issues. Next slide, please. So in terms of next step, it's pretty much status quo. And as is customary, I will provide an update at the Actually, the next regular board meeting is in December, so I didn't update this slide. My apologies. So with that, if there's any questions, be happy to respond.
Questions or comments from the board?
John Weed, quick comment.
Director Weed?
I believe testing will be part of any recovery from COVID-19 and will be with us for some period of time. And one suggestion was, I recently heard, seemed to make some sense on the financial standpoint, that if you were to test 10 or even 100 samples at once and you had no hits, then you could clear all 100 for the cost of one test, or near the cost of one test. So I would encourage us to look into the ability to do group testing, pooled testing of a number of samples. And then, because that would greatly reduce the overall cost of the operation and the process.
I think Director Weed and I were listening to the same KCBS broadcast this morning. Exact same thing they were mentioning. The scary part was they were discussing, it was the ask the expert part, Bob. The scary part was they were discussing that they had done a study on Marine recruits and a very controlled environment of young 20-somethings. And what they found was they had multiple hits, asymptomatic, no symptoms. 2 people had minor fevers, and some of them had serious amounts of virus in them, but there were no sick recruits. And they were very concentrated. They were not, because you're dealing with Marine recruits in boot camp, and what they did is they actually rented a college. They had a very controlled group, and they tested them frequently, and they were doing temperature checks, et cetera. One of the concepts the doctor was mentioning was just what John mentioned, was group testing. The concept is you test 100. If you do get a positive, then you could retest apparently and go back and find out who it was. But it allows you to do many more quickly and concentrate then down onto where you get your hit. And this was on this morning's Ask the Expert on KCBS. It was a fascinating, almost a little bit frightening regarding the concept of asymptomatic and the fact that we're not testing people who don't have symptoms, and yet none of the people exhibited basically any symptoms that would have required a test.
Thank you, Director Gunther. And I just want to do a quick time check. It's 9:20, and please remember we have 4 closed sessions. Okay, any questions on what Bob has so far? All right. So, Mr. Shaver, I guess next is Stevenson Boulevard.
Yes, I have my hand up. This is
Hi, Fred. I thought you forgot to put it down. All right. So, what question do you have?
Well, it's more a request from staff because several of these reports talk about reliability in a qualitative standpoint. But would it be possible to assign a number to the reliability, such as, 80% coverage over 100 years? And feeding back to what Director Huang and Director Weed said, then it's possible to relate that to cost. So that gives them, like we talked about fish ladders and a few other topics. And it'd be good to have a numeric way to compare them.
Fred, I think if memory serves me right, staff did that when we first started this process. There was actually, if we don't do this, then we'll experience X number more dry events at normal water supply outlook, and then there's a dry weather outlook. So it actually does exist. So I'm going to ask staff to look for those data.
There's at least 3 projects which talk about reliability.
Right.
And it'd be good to actually have the comparison that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
So typically when we bring a project to the board for consideration, we do present the project from different perspectives, and one of them is reliability. And we usually compare alternatives in that regard. And for the large project that has been the bulk of the discussion of the meeting today, I am just about 100% certain that when we come to the board for their final determination on whether the project is a go or no, we will provide a comprehensive business case, including water supply reliability and a way to evaluate that relative to some potential other alternatives that we looked at. And when it comes to Delta Conveyance, so far, staff has not been able to come up with a project that is both cost effective and can replace 40% of our overall water supply.
Okay.
So if there's any specific information that our customer would like to see, I would encourage him to contact me offline, and I will endeavor to provide him with specific information.
And that's where I'm going. Since we are off agenda item, we have discussed that item, we voted. So I see Mr. Ken N has his hand up. I suggest if there information you and Fred is looking for from staff, please send the email to General Manager, Mr. Shaver, if you need additional data. ACWD's data is always open to the public. We discuss multiple items on today's agenda multiple times in the past. I'm sure it's there somewhere. All right, let's go back to the agenda of 6.4.2 Stevenson Boulevard main break.
Yes, Mr. Ahrens, our operations and maintenance manager, would like to make a short presentation because I know there was board interest about a relatively large water main break that occurred early in the morning, I believe, on a Sunday when I was away from the office. So finally, I planned a little mini vacation so that I gave staff an opportunity to address a situation without my input, and I'm sure they appreciated that. So, Mr. Ahrens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver, members of the board. Yeah, I just want to give you a very quick update. Again, thank Bob for letting us experience the excitement without his guidance. It was much appreciated. This happened about a week and a half ago on Sunday, November 1st. I don't have a presentation, but my background screen can give you an indication of the situation as it was occurring. So it's a little bit hard to see. That's basically water shooting up in the center median, with the center median kind of creating a bridge.
If you go to speaker view on the upper right corner, you can click on that and get an enlarged photo of Mr. Ahrens with his very dramatic Bellagio fountain impersonation photo.
Yeah, we have it backlit and everything. We put a lot of effort into getting a good picture here. But anyway, we began getting calls about 1:20 in the morning. This happened, and started getting calls into our service. Crews responded and were able to isolate the valves and stop the flow of water. Took a little while and took quite a bit of searching for the valves, and especially the ones that were covered in water. But we were able to isolate the leak. And it did end up isolating about 40 homes, as well as the Mission Valley Regional Occupational Center, which is located on Black Cow and Stevenson. But that's not in service right now, to associate the high school. So there's no impacts there, but there were about 40 homes that were taken out of service. Leak was determined to be on the district's 18-inch service main that runs down the center median of Stevenson Boulevard. We did take out several lanes of traffic to make this repair. As you can see, the leak was in their center median, but there was such a volume of water that undermined some of the lanes. So in addition to needing room to work, we're also concerned with just the integrity of the roadway. So we were able to keep one lane open in each direction through that Sunday. And we had crews out there that pretty much worked throughout the day and into the evening, replacing about 13 feet of the 18-inch pipe, and had water back on about 2 in the morning on Monday, the following Monday. So it was about a 24-hour event between the first reports, making the repair, and getting the service back on. The following Monday, we were able to restore the roadway and get all the lanes open again. And actually we're able to get crews out to restore the center median, restore the roadway. So it was a quite an eventful 24 hours for our crews. As far as any damage, we had one potential caller that claimed their vehicle was damaged from the water. We provide them the claim forms, but so far no official claims have been made. Other than that, there haven't been any other signs of damage from that event. I did want to give the board a quick update and then answer any questions that you might have.
Questions or comments from the board for Mr. Arentz?
Yes, Kurt.
Yes.
Paul Sethy here. I put in an inquiry into you about this situation when it happened. And I was more concerned about any impacts to businesses in that vicinity. There's a gas station on the corner there across from the Regional Occupational Center, right on the corner of Stevenson Blakeout. Were they impacted? Were any businesses impacted? Because I was concerned about claims from businesses that might have been affected for an entire Sunday.
Yeah, no, when we were able to isolate the leak, it only took out 40 homes, mostly on the courts off of Omar Street. So there's about 4 homes on Omar Street and then 2 courts that were out of water. Beyond that, the only thing on Stevenson was the occupational center, and everything else remained in service.
Well, good work by your entire team.
Yeah, they always step up to these types of events, so much appreciate their efforts.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you, Kurt, for a nice response. I'm sorry, I'm one of those directors that sent you email bright and early in the morning going, you what? Close what?
Anytime, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, but at some point, I think we need to talk about perhaps did we get any inquiries regarding perhaps with ACWD provide bottled water? As I tell you, I would be really, really cranky if I have no water to make coffee early in the morning.
Yeah, we didn't on this event. We did have a couple of people reach out to the district on status and, wanting information, but no requests were made for water. And that's something right now is basically we try to handle on a case-by-case basis, depending on the length of the outage and what the situation is. Or if people do contact us requesting, support, we try to do what we can to meet their needs.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much for a great response. See, Mr. Shaver, it's safe for you to go on vacation.
Oh, I'm very confident that staff can handle anything that comes up.
I seem to remember right before you left on vacation, you were saying every time you go on vacation, everything is fine, and then jinx yourself.
Well, it's my experience though with our previous general manager is he was very, very good at planning. So disasters always happened when he was away on vacation. Earthquakes, all sorts of things always happened.
I see. So now you're honing your skill to do the same.
I'm finally learning how to do this.
I see. All right. Any other general managers report?
Yes, we have 2 other items. The next one will be very brief, and that will be presented by Mr. Stevenson regarding some public outreach that we're planning.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver, and good evening, board and public. Yep, quick announcement here. No disasters involved in this topic. Just a quick heads up that staff is preparing to start construction on another major construction project. This is the Canyon Heights Booster Station project. And as is customary, we'll hold a virtual community information meeting to ensure that we're providing some more information to the public and answering questions. That'll be on December 1st at 5 p.m. We've sent notices to the folks around the project and also posted information on our website. We'll be posting additional information, and I'll be forwarding some information about this event to the board. I'll be interested in understanding what directors plan to attend, given that if more than 2 plan to attend, we'll have to format the meeting as a special board meeting. and we'll want to be able to prepare for that. I know there'll be one director who will not be able to attend as a result of the proximity of the project to property. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that that notice and that email is coming. And if you're interested in attending, please let us know and then save the date December 1st at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Ed. And then I did have one other item. I know the board is very familiar with this project, or most of the members should be. It has a long history, and it's heating up again. And this is the Quarry Lakes Parkway project, formerly called Route 84, then the East-West Connector, and most recently Quarry Lakes Parkway. You know, it's a proposed 4-lane roadway essentially from Paseo Padre Parkway to Mission Boulevard. And both the city of Fremont and Union City staff support the project. As a reminder, ACWD has interests in the project as well. We own a landlocked property along the alignment that will be impacted and have access after the road is constructed. The roadway traverses Alameda Creek, Old Alameda Creek, and actually has 3 separate bridges associated with it. I should also mention that Union City acquired right-of-way from Caltrans, and it intends to sell what is called the Ramirez Ranch property to a developer, which is a key funding element of the project. And there's some reasons for that. Eventually, the city plans to offer it to below market rate housing sponsors to make more affordable housing in the area. And then there is the Peterson farmhouse that is expected to need to be removed or relocated and maybe historical. Staff is aware of various concerns being raised by the public about the project. And I just wanted to give the board a heads up that we were recently contacted by Union City staff regarding the project, specifically asking ACWD to address concerns being raised by certain community members regarding potential groundwater impacts. And separately, ACWD staff was contacted by an individual named Robert Zerwinski, who identified himself as a member of the East-West Connector Mitigation Monitoring Committee. This committee was formed by ACTIA, which was the agency that acquired the project from Caltrans. It was formerly ACTA. And it's really not clear what the status of the committee is at this time, but maybe you're aware of this individual. So staff last reviewed the CEQA documentation for the project in 2009. And in our communications with city staff, Union City staff, we confirmed with the city that while we were committed to working with them to understand the current scope of the project, we haven't reviewed it in detail in quite a while. And we also would like to address any potential groundwater impacts. We certainly would want to reacquaint ourselves with the scope of the project, make sure we understand that it is protective of groundwater. And now the new element is steelhead as well, since it's likely that if construction occurs, it will be after the fish ladders will be operational. So that's a new element. So we're happy to work with city staff to make sure that the district's interests are being protected. So in summary, staff will continue to coordinate with the city to make sure we understand the scope of the project and to request specific measures to be included in the scope to ensure that it is protective of groundwater as appropriate and protective of steelhead and other creek uses. And staff plans to involve an ACWD board committee moving forward. And I'm currently thinking the best fit is the Water Resources and Conservation Committee. So we'll give an update on November 23rd. And that committee, to refresh your memory, consists of directors Sethy and Gunther. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what is going on with the Quarry Lakes Parkway project. And that's all the GM report items that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. With that, let's move on.
I'd just like to point out for the record that I did attend a gathering from some of the let's say, people that are not in favor of this project. That said, it was as a private citizen and not representing anything to do with the water district. However, I do understand some of their concerns that I could pass on to Mr. Schaefer. I don't necessarily agree with their concerns, but I heard what they said. So there is some opposition to this. I will say that the opposition may be, I would not take them lightly, as they're kind of a core group from the opposition from the Masonic Home Project, which they succeeded very strongly in. So just letting you know that I was there at one of their meetings on the corner of by Ramirez Farm.
Mr. John Weed, this is probably the best time to tie into this with comment. I'm president of the Washington Township Historical Society, Director Sethy, vice president. Our speaker for the meeting on November 23rd, Monday evening, will be Liz Ames, who is a BART director and also chair of Save the Hills in Union City. And she's promoting the retention of the Peterson family farm complex as another Shin house. So that presentation will be at 7 p.m. And I can, if anyone's interested, we can give you the link to the Washington Township Historical Society Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wee. All right. So with that, that's a perfect segue into director's comment, reports on meeting attended, and agenda item review. Who wants to start?
I guess I could start. I took Director Sethy's comments regarding the Region 5, and I had an opportunity to watch it this afternoon or this morning. And correct, it was a very good meeting on regarding the disadvantaged water community. Bill, Cindy Tuck from Aqua had some good things to say, particularly what we need to start watching. But all in all, I'm glad I watched it, and I couldn't watch it on Tuesday. I had to watch it today, so that's what I got there. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Director Gunther.
I have no comments or reports or requests. I would like to take a break though between going to closed door session.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Let's finish director's comments and let's hop into closed session and take a break. So pardon?
I was going to say I have no director's comments.
Okay, thank you, Director Akbari. Director Weed.
Yes, I attended a number of webinars over the past several weeks. And of issues I think that might be of interest to us that we may need to take a look at, particularly since we have an investment in semi-tropic and and groundwater banking. That there's a class action lawsuits coming forth on 123 TCP under strict liability. There's a statute of limitations, and they're looking for people to get involved with it. I don't know that we should, but I can give the link to the staff on the attorneys that are promoting that. SL Environmental Law Group is the firm which has been on at least 2 presentations. Next, there were several on recycled water, all quite expensive and generally driven by litigation in the case of Las Virgenes and others, and required, but you can solve anything. And nitrates into the Pacific Ocean was the issue that drove Las Virgenes into a very expensive program. And some of the environmental groups, much like we encountered with the fish ladders, drove them to some decisions that would not have been made otherwise. Of particular import, though, was the presentations on Los Vaqueros. And in that, I also attended 2 water supply exploratory committee meetings of the Santa Clara Valley Water District. They were offered 3 options on Los Vaqueros. 1, full partnership. 2nd, only investing in the pipeline and a very limited amount of storage to be able to supply water in case there were limitations on the South Bay Aqueduct. And third was only investing in the pipeline itself. Both ACWD and Bosco were not given those three options in our discussions. Santa Clara staff costed out each of those three options. And I know our staff is in the process of looking at the cost elements of that project, and I encourage us to do so. It appears that a part of that cost element will be supporting the cost of operating the watershed for Contra Costa, and Contra Costa and East Bay Mud are now asking for veto authority in the operations of the facilities, something that, again, was not discussed when we were talked about the JPA. So it's an item in process, and I encourage us to stay in touch with the staff at Santa Clara and as well as representatives from Contra Costa and East Bay Mud. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed.
You know what? Director Weed is reminding me of something, so I do have a request to put in. There was in the Los Vaqueros presentation for the Region 5 meeting we had the other day, there was an excellent part of the presentation which I had never seen before from Contra Costa Water District, which was a video presentation of how the plumbing will work from multiple systems on this project. It's about a 10-minute video, and I thought it was just very well done. And for the first time as a director on our board, I finally got the full picture of how everything is interoperable and what the opportunities are for water supply. So if we could get a hold of that video and show it to our board, it's only like 8 minutes, something like that. It's very instructional. I thought it was.
I agree. It was a really good video of how it's actually a simplistic video of how it'll work.
I think we can get a copy of that and share it. Ms. Heides will take the lead on that. Thank you.
That's under the Aqua Region 5 Zoom meeting. If I could quickly belly to my comments earlier, I voted against our participation in LBE because I would have supported getting involved in the pipeline only. That is a critical import and a benefit to the district. I do not see the benefit in the other efforts. So I have the same position I took at Bosco. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Weed. Okay, so I don't have any comment. I have a question for Mr. Warren. Mr. Warren, would it be easier for us to take a break and come back then jump into a closed session, or would it be easier for you just dump us in the closed session and we'll take a break?
Yeah, probably just to record the time that you guys actually go into the closed session. Maybe you take a break now, come back, and then I can have it on the record.
Okay. Now it's 9:45. Why don't we take a 15-minute break, come back at 10 o'clock, then we'll go into a closed session.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
956.8, conference with real property negotiators, property, N3 Cattle Company consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessors' parcel numbers were finished by owners' representatives and are attached to this agenda. Agency negotiators, Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson. Negotiating parties, N3 Cattle Company, LLC, Rand Jr. and Rand Jr. Trustee. Under negotiation, price and term of payment. Item 8.4 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Title General Manager. So with that, Mr. Warren, would you put us into closed session for item 8.1, please?
Yes, and just for the record, there's 4 different closed sessions, but only essential parties will be participating in each of the different 4. So there'll be different parties participating in each of the 4 closed sessions. So just want to put that on the record.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. So give me a moment and I will put you in the first closed session.
is 12:29. The board has returned from closed session. I think all my directors are here. Yes, okay. So for item 8.1, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency designated negotiators, Robert Shaver, Jennifer Solito, Jonathan Wonderlick, and Stacy Q. Employee organizations, Operating Engineers Local 3, and ACWD Operators Association. Direction is given to agency negotiators. Item 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, one case. No action was taken in closed session. Item 8.3, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators, property and 3 cattle company consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessors' parcel numbers were furnished by owner's representative and are attached to this agenda. Agency negotiators, Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson, negotiating parties, and 3 Cattle Company, LLC, Rand Jr. and Rand Jr. trustees. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment. For this item, directions were given to agency negotiators. That's it. And item 8.4, pursuant to California Government Code Section 5495.7, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, title General Manager. For this item, we provided direction to General Manager and no action was taken in closed session. With that is 12:31 and I will call the meeting adjourned. Wow, that was a mouthful and I did that